check it out. I think you can participate in
Welcome
everything.
everybody to the December 7th meeting of the Amherst Planning Board.
For a free heckler?
This meeting is being
For car wash.
broadcast
Car
live
wash.
on Amherst Media. It's also being recorded by town staff for purposes of preparing the minutes. And
One I think is coming out
again
tomorrow.
tonight with the
They place it up there.
discussion of the minutes from November 16th, 2011.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion of the minutes? Need another minute? I'll vote for the minute. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? And any opposed or abstaining? Thank you.
Oh, I have a fancy microphone. Just have to speak.
Okay, one moment. Chris, I can't find my usual statement.
I'm sorry,
I was in Provincetown today, so, you know, it's fine. I make choices because of your expertise on that. Pay attention. Pick up hours.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 48, this public hearing has been duly advertised, and notice has been posted in the town hall and sent to abutters. The hearing process is being held to provide the opportunities for interested citizens to be informed about and comment on the proposed site plan. This is SPR 2012-2 M11396, 27 Pomeroy Lane, the Amherst Montessori School. Requests approval for construction of a 5,463 square foot addition to an existing building, revised parking layout, and drainage improvements. Map parcel 20C, parcel 85, zoned RVC. Does any board member have a disclosure to make about anything to do with this project? Yes.
I live on Pomeroy Lane, but I don't think it's an issue. I don't go to the school or have anything to do with it, so. But I'm a quarter of a mile, third of a mile away from the site.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. In that case, we will please hear from the applicant.
We have to be applicant.
could you use the microphone?
You can take it off the stand if you need to.
Stabbing myself in the chest. Good evening. I'm Jeff Squire from Berkshire Design Group, here on behalf of the applicant, Amherst Montessori School. Just a brief overview of the project. Many of you were out there during the site walk earlier this week. But again, we're looking at the roughly 2-acre parcel on Pomeroy, at 27 Pomeroy Lane. Currently, there's an paved access drive that comes in with a loop circle in front of the existing building. There's playground on the north side, on the south side, the existing site beyond the building addition is really having minimal changes made to it. The proposal, as many of you are aware, are to add a roughly 5,500 two-story square foot addition. The existing building sits here. The proposal is to add a 2-story addition on the west side of the existing building. There's a lawn area there now. That's where the addition is proposed to go. In addition, there are, because of the drainage issues, circulation issues, and parking issues, we are proposing to improve the existing circulation and driveway loop that comes in from Pomeroy.
Is there a way to?
I can pull these back.
Yeah.
Sure.
Rotated? Yeah.
See it.
see. Let me put this down for a minute. Combined easels. So I was saying, the proposal is to maintain this edge of the parking lot, the existing drive where it exists now because of wetland issues. Wetland, there's a L-shaped wetland, essentially a drainage swale on this portion, on this side of the driveway. The rest of the site around this side is also wetland. There's also a 75-foot no building zone that we need to adhere to in terms of the building. So in terms of overall site constraints, we're very limited as to what can actually be done. So as I was saying, this edge of the pavement is proposed to remain the same. They are proposing to improve the, right now there's parallel parking that they utilize on the west side of the road. Most of the cars end up parking in that in the grass area, the muddy area, gravel area. So we're simply proposing to construct actual parallel parking spaces there that are 8.5 by 22 feet wide. We've got a 17.5-foot drive aisle. This loop is largely remaining in the same location. We did realign the parking slightly at both ends so that it's more head-in and it creates a better circulation pattern. We've widened it slightly in front of the building to provide a drop-off lane and loop for cars that are leaving children for the day. There's a defined entry plaza, if you will, and a covered porch. Again, the notion is that the expectation is that when children get dropped off, that the parents don't actually get out of the cars, that the cars simply circulate through, staff gets the kids out of the cars, brings them in, and the cars continue out. So there's not really a need for people to stop, park, get out of their cars and bring people in. Again, the existing site, the play area, play structures are largely remaining the same. One improvement we are making is we're proposing a sandbox in the rear corner of the property. Currently, there's a low point here with a catch basin that's clogged that ties into the larger system, which I'll talk about later. But what we're proposing to do is improve that situation, slightly upgrade the size of the pipe that comes out of it, because right now I think it's only a 4-inch pipe. And what we're proposing is essentially a sandbox with 2 feet of sand. There's an under drain under that which will connect to that existing pipe. So the idea is it will capture as much roof runoff as we can, utilize that as a detention area, if you will. Clean roof water will filter through the sand into the sub-drain and exit the site as it does now. So that's the one, I guess, play component that is being proposed as part of this project. The rest is staying the same. Before I get into the stormwater drainage questions, because that's going to be a longer discussion, some of the other proposals or site elements we are proposing to add some site lighting. It's not expected that it will be used very often this time of year. Obviously, if children are being picked up and during the dark hours, that they'll be lit. They don't need to have the lights on during the night, is my understanding, unless there's an event or something going on that requires people to be there, after hours. Typically, it will only be for the safety of children being dropped off early in the morning or after hours or after dark at the end of the day. And all those are dark sky compliant and shielded to the extent that we can. Finally, stormwater management. The proposal right now is to, let me back up a little bit. The existing site, where's that? The existing site right now consists of two sort of drainage areas. There's a swale along this side of the driveway, the existing driveway, that takes sheet flow from these parcels. That also collects some of the water from this portion of the drive. The remainder of it drains to a catch basin in this rear property and then exits the site. the discharge for that last catch basin is right here. There's a pipe that discharges stormwater now off in a westerly direction. What we're proposing to do is try and improve, to the extent that we can, the water that is coming off of the paved areas. So what we are proposing is, right now, this island in the center of that circle is a raised island, planting bed. And we're proposing to do the opposite, is turn it into a depression, create a rain garden there. In effect, we're able to adjust the grades enough so that we're capturing 80% of the new paved, of the paved surfaces. The ridge is back here somewhere. We're able to capture all of that into this system, keep it from going into that wetland. Right now on site, there is no stormwater treatment. It's the entire stormwater system consists of catch basins and pipes. There is no treatment effectively. There's a couple of sumps in some of the catch basins, but really the water that's being discharged now is largely untreated. This rain garden allows us to treat, like I said, 80% of the impervious parking area. We treat it to 90%. The rain gardens get 90% TSS removal. That's what we're treating before we discharge it. We realize that recognize that the additional impervious surface creates an additional volume. To compensate for that, we're proposing a subsurface detention basin. Because groundwater is so high out here, groundwater is roughly at 24 inches or so, obviously the concern is that these subsurface elements, if you will collect groundwater. So to alleviate those concerns, we've lined both of those structures. So we've got a liner on that rain garden. It's got the detail for it is in compliance with DEP standards, with the under drain, the soil layers that need to be there. This structure is also lined. Essentially, it's just a stone trench with a pipe to hold that volume of stormwater. We are matching pre and post flows coming off the site. That is typically what's required, and the standards that we adhere to on any project is we match pre and post flows coming off the site. We treat it. That's what we're doing. We received comments from Jason Skeels, city engineer, this afternoon. I guess what I'd like to do is talk through some of those concerns, the larger stormwater issue, because my hope is that you can get an understanding of what the situation is now, how it relates to the adjacent sites, and how we're proposing to address all those issues on this site. One of the goals, obviously we would love to get a conditional approval tonight. I realize that letter is a little scary, so that's what I want to do is talk through it. The reason for sort of the need for an approval tonight is because the Montessori school's construction schedule is set up such that they're hoping to start construction early spring and be done in September, which alleviates the need for a lot of other site-related and financial issues that come up later, i.e. the need for potential modular classrooms. If they can get everybody out for the summer, get all the construction done for the school year, that issue may go away. It's a whole snowball of issues that are related to that aggressive construction schedule and taking advantage of the summer construction period. Stormwater-wise, let's start with this one. So what is going on right now is that originally these four parcels were all one property. And this we've done an extensive amount of deed research. We've met with Jason Skeels a number of times and had this discussion and understand now, just as of Thursday, what is going on. And also, just so you understand, the comments that he has made in his letter were from the notice of intent plans, which were submitted 2 months ago. And so we're a little bit frustrated that we didn't receive those until today, this afternoon, because, yes.
I'm going to interrupt you for
Yep.
1 second and let Chris Brestrup weigh in.
I'm just wondering if the planning board would be able to see the various parcels and how everything relates to one another with this plan as
Sure.
opposed to that plan, because that's a little bit.
Excellent.
Sure, that's fine. So anyway, there's a little bit of frustration in that a lot of these could have been addressed because they're very minor technical issues. They wouldn't have been addressed, they wouldn't have come up in the letter if we had an opportunity prior to this afternoon to address some of those. Again, he was responding to plans in the stormwater permit, which submitted with the notice of intent plans at least 2 months ago. You know, he did receive another set of plans with the site plan submission. They were the same, slightly different set of plans with more information, you know, in the required time frame. You know, we had it a month beforehand, but so that's what those comments are for, are addressing.
Could you point out on that one, the 4 parcels you're talking about?
It's this actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? These
Can you
4.
orient us, what's the site we're looking at now?
It's
and
this
how-
highlighted one here is the
Okay.
Montessori site.
Okay, and can you describe what
This
the
is
other sites are?
This is the Jehovah's Witness site, the church. These are both private residences. So going back, this was subdivided out. This was originally a single-family home that converted to the Montessori school. When the Kingdom Hall site got approved, and we've got some plans that we were finally able to dig up. What the proposal was to construct a detention basin in the rear of the property, which is there. Stormwater, and I'm going to use 2 plans if I can. I will try to orient you in the same direction if that helps. So this drive, this circle and building is this drive, circle and building, if everybody
Could you put it on the other?
can do it on this board, yes. And so right now, when this building, when this site plan was approved, it included a detention basin in the rear of the property. It included catch basins here, here, and here. And all of the water from the parking lot is directed into, they've got 2 swales in the back here. And this was designed so that the water from the parking lot would get captured in these swales, come into this existing detention basin, and then be discharged through an outlet pipe on the adjacent property. There's an existing easement right now for that drainage connection, that drainage outlet on the adjacent property. The water from the Montessori site was approved 2 years later. And what it included, because essentially when this got constructed, it created a dam for surface drainage from all of these parcels going in this direction. That's where it always went. So when this got developed, that created a dam. So in effect, it created flooding issues on the Montessori site. It created flooding issues all upstream. When this drive got originally installed, it again created a dam. That's the reason for this drainage swale and trench on this side. There are still issues with this. There are still issues with this. What happens is water, there are 2 pipes that come in that outlet from this drainage swale. There's one that takes water up, connects to this catch basin, and continues through that system. That takes about a third, maybe, a quarter of the water that goes into this swale based on the grades. The remainder of the water goes into a pipe here, gets connected to a catch basin that is on the Montessori site, ties into a catch basin that is down here, and then right now it outlets into this detention basin next door. What was approved in the plans for the Montessori site when that originally got developed was a connection from this catch basin to this catch basin and out, so that this site's drainage was not to impact the Kingdom Hall's drainage system. It was simply a conduit in which to lay the pipe, get drainage across to the low point out here, because that's the only place that's low enough in this area to discharge stormwater. What got put in and installed was a connection from this catch basin directly into here. So understandably, and this is what came out of our meetings with Jason, I've got plans of what was supposed to be constructed. Right now, none of this stormwater that leaves this site is being treated. We're proposing to treat all 80% of the stormwater that's coming off of this paved area to 90%, holding in our basin and then discharging it.
Can you explain what treat means, please?
TSS removal, total suspended solids. That's what we're required to treat the stormwater to coming off of the paved surfaces. Typically, it's done with a storm scepter, some sort of mechanical treatment chamber, whatever it is, or other means. This rain garden, the rain garden is again, it's a LID recommended stormwater.
Could you say things out in not the acronyms?
Low impact design. The rain gardens are a proposed stormwater treatment element that DEP is recommending in lieu of these mechanical chambers. So that's what we're proposing there, to treat the stormwater to the required treatment level that we need to. So when water leaves this location here, it's getting treated 90% better than what it is today. The remainder of the water that is going into this system is roof runoff or yard runoff, which is all typically you don't need to treat, you aren't required to treat. The flooding concerns that occur right now on the adjacent residential properties are largely caused by, particularly in the winter, when this trench gets filled with snow, freezes, water can now no longer get into those inlet pipes right now. This water we're capturing, we're treating, we've got measures to address any issues there. But at this location, this one's slightly lower. So to address those issues, what we've proposed, and this is what we talked about with Jason, is that rather than just the end of a pipe sticking out of the ground, to put an actual structure there at the edge of the wetland, so that we're not impacting the wetland. We don't have to go, we don't have to disturb any BVW, any wetland requiring replication. Put a structure in there with a catch basin on top with a grate that's at an elevation lower than this property here, so that water, if this does flood and fill up, water has an opportunity to get into that catch basin and leave the site and not create a dam like it does now. There's a relief valve for it, whereas today there is no relief valve for it. That's the reason for the flooding. Again, it's getting water from here across the site out to here. I'd like to go through, I guess, quickly some of the comments that Jason had in his letter, unless there's any other questions or comments.
So explain that catch basin again. Okay, so the swale, I understand everything up. Where exactly is the catch? I mean, the relief valve is?
It's right now, this pipe is just a 12-inch PVC pipe that is stuck into the hillside. So when this trench gets filled with snow and freezes in the winter, water can no longer get into there, can no longer leave the site. So it just backs up. And because this driveway is higher than most of this property, it just backs up and ponds back here. So what we're doing is we're essentially picture a catch basin structure with a 12-inch hole at the bottom to match that pipe at that elevation. But at the top, we've got a grate, a catch basin grate, that is lower than this property, so that even if that lower elevation that 12 inches at the bottom freezes, if this is filled with snow, there's still a catch basin at the surface that can take water, can take runoff coming off, and it doesn't create ponding issues on the adjacent property.
And so that would require maintenance also, right? So
Sure,
somebody would have
yes.
to, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yep.
Yes.
If I could make a suggestion, before we dive into the real details of the drainage, sort of assuming that that's going to be the focus point, it might be worthwhile to surface what all the concerns are.
Sure.
Because if we're not ready to act, we have other major concerns, then you'll have given us a lot of detail about drainage that may get resolved at a later date. So,
Sure.
well, it may be the most important thing, I don't know what my colleagues will think, I might want to have some time to explore the full range of the issues.
Sure, sure.
Pull your mic down. Your mic, next
Oh.
time.
Sorry, viewing audience.
I can't hear you.
Do I have to push the button to make this? Do you have to push these?
Mr. Crown, I'm finding this actually very interesting. But I'd like, so I wouldn't mind hearing it even if it's, but could you just say what the standard for TSS?
80% is the standard.
And you're going to 90%?
We're going to 90%. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? The asphalt's already existing,
Yes.
and you're not planning to change that, maybe widen it slightly to allow for the
Yes.
parallel parking and still keep a 17 or so foot
Correct.
two-way. Have you given any consideration to the permeable asphalt, or that might help in the situation?
Yes, couple things. We've considered, we considered gravel paving, first of all, to mitigate some of the concerns about increase in impervious. What ends up happening is that the degree of perviousness, if you will, for the gravel doesn't provide the project any benefit. It's maybe 5% different. That's the standard. So it really doesn't provide any benefits in terms of permeability from a permitting standpoint. The other concern is that during the winter, everybody knows that all that gravel, where that gravel is going to end up.
I was talking about the permeable asphalt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's something that we're willing to look at. Cost is very high for one, especially for such a small project. Typically, it's not cost effective unless you're doing a large paving area, because the way that it needs to happen is that an asphalt plant needs to completely shut down, clean out everything, mix a specific batch of this stuff, and then, ship it to the job site. So on such a small project, it just doesn't economically make sense. Can we do open graded paver units, some of those things? Yes, although because groundwater is so high, it really doesn't provide you the benefits that you would typically expect to see with those pavers. I'm completely in the same side with most people about, not paving more than you have to, given that there's wetlands and all the issues here. In this case, there is some sense to it, and that can be maintained, it's clearly defined, and that we're not expanding what's there much beyond what it is now.
Do you have any information, deviating slightly from the question of drainage, have you heard from the fire department?
There was another colleague that used to be on the project before I got involved. When they had those discussions, when those discussions were had with the fire department, it did necessitate a new fire service. Right now, the building is not sprinklered. It does, building code and the addition do require the building to be sprinklered. So a new 6-inch fire service is being brought into the building. Out of that earlier discussion, there was also the request for a new fire hydrant out in the front island. So that is also being part of that, was part of their recommendation that we've had on these plans from the beginning. I have not heard anything from them within the last week and a half.
Anything about the turnaround area?
No, again, I know when this initial conversation with them took place, they were aware of the project, aware of the limitations. There were certain recommendations that came out of that earlier discussion, hence the fire hydrant, the sprinkler, et cetera. We have improved access as much as we can, given the constraints that we have. I understand that, there may be some additional concerns, or there may have been some concerns about, the ability to turn around. I'm not sure what else can be proposed beyond what we've done, because there really is no ability, given the way the property is configured, to make that loop big enough to accommodate a ladder truck or some of their biggest vehicles.
Are you changing the loop area?
We've
very much?
widened it and made the radiuses more suitable, more manageable.
Do you have a before and after on that?
This is, right now, there's a very tight radius down at this end toward the building. So to make that to make that turn is a lot tighter than, we've widened this here, so there's the ability to swing, there's more of an ability to swing out, and with the addition of the parallel spaces, this, this radius can now swing out further than it did previously. Because right now, this comes in, to this drive fairly abruptly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything further you'd like to?
How did we resolve, I believe that he was about to address these points, are we gonna?
I think, Connie, did you have particular areas that you were thinking of?
I just, okay, do we go through the hearing and then close it and then have a discussion? Or do we want, I'm a little unsure how to,
Okay,
because I have some issues, but they're not about drainage, but I don't know when the right time is to.
Well, at this point, have you any more pieces of your prepared presentation, or have you finished that?
Like I said, Kuhn Riddle is here and is happy to talk to you and present the building elevations. They are new architects relatively new architects. The original architects, McKay Architects, are no longer on the project. Kuhn Riddle is now doing the building design. So we have elevations and floor plans updated to present tonight. If you're willing to see those and listen to that. I'm also more than happy to go through Jason's list of concerns and hopefully leave everybody with a little bit of sense of where things are at and the magnitude of what some of those are, because some are very minor.
Mr. Schreiber?
Mr. Chair, I would like to hear the response to Jason's letter.
It's fine. I'll bring up my concerns after we go through the drainage.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and address Mr. Skill's letter?
Okay. So what I'll do, hopefully just very quickly run through these. I'll spend more time on the ones that have some substance to them. First one regarding the town datum, it was simply a survey. It's a survey issue. This is an assumed datum of 100. There's a 65.64 difference between the town datum and the survey data that we have for this plan. It's simply an adjustment to all those numbers. It doesn't affect the way this site functions at all.
So you're talking about, if I understand you correctly, it's just sort of shifted on the map. The whole thing is.
It's in elevation. It's purely an elevation.
Elevation.
Where we have a 100 contour is, according to the Amherst GIS, 100.65.64. So everything on this site just gets 64.65 feet added to it. It's the town. The town has its own datum. The town GIS, the Jason Skeels, the engineering department, has their engineering plans, all their information on a certain datum, on a certain elevation.
So that's about 8 inches?
No, it's 64 feet.
64 feet.
Right. But all that is when this site got surveyed, they assumed at the benchmark, whether it be a hydrant or wherever it was, that it was 0 or it was 100, rather than looking at the town datum that said it was 200, 261.5. It's a common occurrence.
Yeah.
It's
So it'd be just a matter of adding or subtracting.
right.
I understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect the slope of pipes. It doesn't affect any of that stuff at all. It all is still a a functioning system. It's just at a different elevation.
Let's see.
Test pits were not performed on site. No one from the office was there to witness. Our standard and our understanding has always been with the DPW that if we are proposing infiltration, if it was a sandy site and we didn't have to line these stormwater elements, these stormwater pieces, and we were relying on gravity to suck the water down through, into the soils, into permeable soils, that they need to witness the depth of that soil, the groundwater levels, all of that. Because we can't infiltrate on this site, we don't have that ability because of high groundwater, and that both of these are lined as a result, there's no need to, the existing soil has very little relevance or no relevance on the drainage system.
Forgive my ignorance, but why do you line them? I don't understand.
Because groundwater is at 2 feet below the surface grade. These systems are down 4 feet, 5 feet in some cases, and if we didn't line them, it would simply suck in groundwater at that whatever elevation was at and discharge it off the site.
So how does the water get out then, once it accumulates?
The existing infrastructure right now is set up to drain the water off the pipe, or drain the water off the site. You know, the elevations, a solid pipe can be
I see.
in groundwater.
Got it.
So is it like a giant bathtub?
It's a bathtub, exactly.
Giant bathtub.
It's a bathtub.
Underground, and then if the water gets up to where the drain
Right.
outlet is, then it goes, but most of it's stored.
Right,
And then the outlet then is below the level.
yes, and that's
Where
the way it is
somewhere
now.
downstream Where the
Yeah.
groundwater level.
When groundwater comes up to that 2-foot elevation, that's where the groundwater is. The existing infrastructure works because it's a closed system. The only open portions of the drainage system are these inlets and any of these catch basins. You know, there's no opportunity for groundwater to get into a solid pipe. And that's, we're proposing the same thing. That's what you would typically do in a high groundwater situation. You know, this bathtub is filled with stone in a pipe. This bathtub is filled with, soil and planting media and, a rain garden. But the relevance of the groundwater and the conditions of the soil have very little, no relevance on the way this system is designed and functions. Does that make sense to everybody? The existing drainage system, number 3, the existing drainage system discharges directly into and combines with the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall property. Drainage easements, et cetera, need to be obtained. Everybody, I think, involved with the project, now that this issue is surfaced, is aware that there needs to be an agreement or cross easements between these two property owners. Not only are we discharging water now to their detention basin, there's also a catch basin up here that right here in these two locations, we're taking water from the Jehovah's Witness parking lot. There's a portion of the parking lot in this area that apparently they couldn't get back here. It goes to our property. So everybody is very aware that there needs to be some agreement to protect everybody in terms of liability. There needs to be an easement to satisfy those concerns. Everybody's aware of that. It's nothing that's going to be solved tonight, next week. It's a conversation that, again, now that this has surfaced as of Thursday, that they need to have that discussion, and everybody is aware of what needs to be talked about and what needs to be accomplished. But again, it's nothing that's going to happen overnight. Unless specific agreements, number 4, unless specific agreements between abutters can be arranged, all stormwater discharges should be required to achieve 80% TSS removal. Like I said, we're capturing 80% of the impervious surface that we would typically be required to treat. We're treating it to 90%. The only piece that we're not treating is this portion of the swale that goes into this pipe. The only way that we would be able to treat stormwater to 80% at that location is to put a storm scepter in. There's a mechanical system at the cost of $12,000 to capture this little piece of drainage swale, that all of which doesn't take water from the parking lot. We've had the discussion with Jason about what needs to be treated, what doesn't. We're treating as much as we possibly can within reason, I guess. This is the major focus of the treatment. Right now, it's all sheet flowing into this swale or offsite, untreated. So we're capturing, is 80% of that and treating it above and beyond what we would typically treat it to. Existing conditions plan needs to show all pipes and catch basin, inlets, outlets, et cetera, et cetera. I clarified with Jason that it meant including this system, which we weren't originally hired to survey. It wasn't our job to figure out all the drainage issues on the adjacent property and survey their property. We do have plans that show what was supposed to be constructed, and we can include all that information on the plan, you know, to satisfy that issue. The outlet pipe from the Montessori stormwater system to the Kingdom Hall detention pond is back pitched at the point of discharge. I'm not sure what all that, I think he is referring to the existing pipe that exits from this catch basin into the detention basin. We recognize that that's not the condition that's supposed to be out there, so I think that goes away if part of what we're proposing now, now knowing what we know, is to correct that and put the connection that was supposed to happen with the plans that were approved in 1990. Again, it's the original design and intent was not to take advantage of their detention system. It was simply to get water in a pipe across their property. And so that's what, you know, now that we realize that that's what's happening, that this connection needs to happen. And the easement that needs to happen is for that length of pipe. So that comment should go away. Based on a site visit, the archival, Kingdom Hall plans and archival do not exactly match existing conditions. I'm not sure. The site plan for the Montessori school, or the plans, the existing site for the Montessori school matches any of the plans that we've looked at so far that have been submitted. There have been some changes to this site, I believe. I think originally they had a larger parking area planned. Now it's only half. There were some islands that were shown in their plans that are now paved. Again, the feeling is that it shouldn't be it shouldn't be this project's job to fix their problems if they didn't get installed or built correctly. You know, there should have been as-built. There should have been a, you know, final set of plans. You know, when this project was done, you know, again, it shouldn't burden this project to have to fix their issues. Jason, I know the discussion, some of that was confirming the location of this outlet and that the connection from this catch basin to this outlet did actually get installed, because we know that this pipe here didn't get installed. I think everybody agrees that we need to do that as just due diligence for the project. It doesn't do anybody any good to have a malfunctioning drainage system and continue to use that. So we need to confirm that, but it's simply a site visit to confirm that there's an outlet there at the elevation that it's supposed to be at. And again, it's, you know, it should be a very simple thing to do. Number 8, the entrance driveway to the Montessori school is higher, creating the dam issue that I was talking about. Again, our proposal, a more fail-safe drainage ditch overflow system needs to be devised to avoid this in the future. That solution with this catch basin, that structure, was what we, Jason, and our office sat down and agreed to when we met with him this week, just the other day. You know, we talked about what you would do, what would be, you know, what would be recommended. That's what was recommended, and I've got, you know, plans I could submit tonight that show that. So hopefully that's that takes care of that issue. Stormwater drainage report is inaccurate, needs to be redone. That came about as a result of, originally we had the elevation information that we had led us to believe that this catch basin drained into this swale and then continued out. When in actuality, there is a point in this drainage swale which collects water and takes it this way. What that does to the drainage report is, right now there's a certain amount of water that is shown in there to be exiting the site. That number gets lower because this much of it now goes this way. Is the only change in that drainage report. You know, we can submit that report. But that's the change. It's a very insignificant change. Channelized flow from the Kingdom Hall parking lot apparently flows into the Montessori stormwater system. Channelized flow also flows to Kingdom Hall stormwater system. These should be included in the models, easements, and agreements. The easements and agreements, absolutely. I just spoke about the need for that. It needs to happen. Include the models is what he's referring to is looking at this whole drainage analysis. That's a considerable project for what needs to be accomplished in our eyes. To have to go out, survey this entire site, and do a drainage analysis on the adjacent property really has very little impact on what the problem is and what's going on. Again, they had approved plans for this site, a stormwater system for this site that needed to be constructed a certain way. Somebody shortcutted that somewhere, that needs to be fixed, but what's happening here and what we're doing with stormwater on this site is being improved, tremendously. So, no details or elevations have been provided for the subsurface stormwater detention. They were included in the plans. They were in there, so that shouldn't be an issue. Size and approximate location of the sewer service could at least be determined at the building. Will the existing sewer service have adequate capacity for the projected expansion? Our initial conversation was that it did, that it could accommodate what was, the increase, and the location of it isn't known between Pomeroy and the building. We know where it outlets the building. We know roughly where it comes into Pomeroy, but there isn't any record. DPW doesn't have any record. There's no way to find out until we actually start the project and determine that. But we know the size, and the size is adequate to accommodate the project. Number 13, existing 1-inch domestic water service should be abandoned. I have revised those plans to abandon the existing service. He asked for a domestic water tap off the new fire service. So again, these plans have been revised to show that. And that's another one of those issues that could have been very easily resolved had we known about it earlier. Comment had been made earlier. Sewer and water services require a minimum 10 foot of separation. Again, I've noted that on these plans. We don't know exactly where that sewer service runs. What would need to happen is when the excavation started, they would need to determine where it is, offset it 10 feet to install the water service. That's, there really isn't a whole lot more to that other than just ensuring that, we know where that existing sewer service is, which would need to happen anyway. No handicapped accessible parking space or discharge aisles indicated on the notice of intent plans. Again, I think in the notice of intent plans, we may not have demarcated the handicap parking space for the Conservation Commission purposes. They were on these site plans. They've always have been. We've got an 8-foot wide handicap space with an 8-foot aisle. He wasn't looking at these plans. Final as-built are required by the Amherst DPW. That's a standard comment and condition that we've always been willing to satisfy. So, it is a very complicated issue, but again, it really boils down to us managing our stormwater on site, meeting the typical standards for outletting stormwater from a project, from a site. The one glitch is that this pipe got installed here instead of here. That needs to be corrected. All those other issues, the easements, some of those other agreements need to happen. But it's, our hope is that that stuff can be worked out in the next, few weeks to month. We will verify that location. But everything else that we've shown on these set of plans now was what we talked about with Jason just earlier this week as a way to resolve any of the current issues. And it would have been nice to have had the opportunity to show them, the notes and the revisions to the plan to satisfy his comments, and given him a chance to respond to that or, agree to that. But that's where we are, if it makes sense to anybody, for everybody.
With the additional square footage to the school, allow them to have more students. Will there be more students, additional students for the school?
Right now, there are 4 classrooms. You can probably speak to it better than I can, sure.
We currently have 8
If you
students.
could use the microphone,
Sure.
please.
Absolutely. You want me to sing?
Sure.
Let me just stop you a second.
Sure.
Where I'm going, my second part of that is, just, are there going to be more students? And if there are, will there be additional faculty and staff?
Yes.
Maybe you could start by giving us an overview of the
Sure. Currently, we have 40
Can you
students who,
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry?
Identify yourself, please.
I'm Tamara Ballas. I'm the head of school of Amherst Montessori School.
Okay.
We currently have 40 students who are in the current building. We have 40 other students who are in the strip mall that is on the other side of the Kingdom Hall. And our kids walk the sidewalk to use the, you've probably seen them since you live on Pomeroy Lane.
I do.
The rope train.
A little parade of them.
Yes. So so that's 80 children total. We'll have 120 capacity for 120.
Why I'm asking this question while we're doing the site Q&A is with additional faculty and staff, there might be a need for additional parking. And that's what I was coming back to because we're hearing the constraints of the site.
Sure, absolutely. Parking is very much on our radar. We are working on developing an agreement with one of the surrounding sites for additional parking. We also have a big push towards carpooling and plan to have a carpooling bulletin board where people can actually arrange carpooling and use our community resources that way. About 50% of our families come from Amherst and could use the bus lines, those kind of things if they chose to. We also have about 20% of our population that comes from Belchertown, and so we actually do have families already who choose to carpool.
My concern wasn't so much about the visitors, because in comments that today, when you did the site inspection, I was reading about you making possible arrangements for after-hours, parent-teacher sorts of things that were off-site.
Yes.
I was more questioning about the need for faculty and staff who come to work every day and have to park on-site, not the visitors.
So
Or the parents dropping off.
Our staff, we will go to 25 staff when we're full on that site.
And it's currently,
Well, I have to think separated. So currently we have 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11 staff operating out of that building. So it will double.
And is your plan to try to have the faculty and staff
Yes.
park on-site?
No.
No, all
Our
right.
plan is actually to have faculty and staff park off-site in one of the other areas.
Okay.
And we have, right now, we don't do a carpool line, so the way that I see it is that the toddler parents, if you look at the plans, we have 2 toddler buildings. We're looking to increase our toddler capacity by 10 a day. So the toddler parents should have access to the parking. And they don't need it because a lot of the toddlers could actually come out of the carpool line, and I've seen that done repeatedly at different schools, but that's what we're working to offer.
Thank you.
well, my concerns are similar around, I have a couple of concerns after participating in the site visit the other day, and parking is one, because I believe you've arranged for 20 spaces, and that includes the parallel parking, which, and my concern, it's a little hard to see because the lines are so light, but you have the parallel parking and left a 17.5-foot wide driving lane, and then some limited parking around the circle. And you have, so you have 20 spaces proposed, and you have, what was the 20-something new ultimate staff people, 25 staff and parents, and who, not everyone will always use the carpool line because people do have to come in from time, so parking. So I'm very concerned that this does not have adequate parking. I'm concerned about the drive lane for both the fire truck passage and for two-way traffic. And when I was there, I saw a group of the children, and they were quite adorable, coming with one of their teachers from the other site. And we don't have a sidewalk. Instead, we have the parallel parking. So the children will be walking in the drive area. And there isn't any sidewalk in this what's essentially like a private road. So that's a real important safety concern for me, as is the fire safety. So circulation, lack of sidewalk, that it's very narrow. And I am probably as loath as anyone to add more parking when it's not needed, but and I'm not a parking expert, but my sense is that this site is inadequate, provides inadequate parking for the use. And it's great if you can get some of these other agreements, but right now I just don't think it works for the number of staff and parents that you're going to have. And I think there's real safety issues because of the population that you serve. And this site plan shows one handicap parking space. Maybe you could point, because it's, and the transfer crosshatch. And I was wondering why maybe there could be two, because they could share the transfer area, but it looked like two might be a good number. And so I'm a little bit worried about it under designed for handicapped access. There may on occasion be evening events where you're also going to have that parking issue. I was wondering about the lighting with the addition of the 8 lights and removing some of the vegetation. It's hard for me to tell if it'll impact any of the abutting uses. I know it's not on your plan, but 500 Courtyard, which are condominiums on the other side of the Kingdom Hall, I don't know if any of your lighting will impact them. It's hard to tell. Also, when you were showing the drainage, how close you're getting on the outflow to the 500 Courtyard development.
That's where this outlet.
Yeah, and I don't know if there may be people here representing that owner group. I don't know, but and I just say on your drainage presentation, you gave a lot of information, but I'm not willing to arbitrate between you and the town engineer. I'd be much more comfortable hearing back from him that you've satisfied some of those conditions. So we didn't know there were that many drainage issues. I'm sorry about the timing on that, but I'm really concerned about circulation.
Yeah, so I can speak to a little bit about that. Right now, currently there is no designated parallel parking spaces. It's in the gravel lot. The only way, because of the other constraints, the other wetland constraints, property line constraints, where the building is, the only way that we can increase parking is to essentially pave this entire area up here. The proposal is, and the hope is that with some of these approvals, site plan, conservation, some of the agreements for some of the adjacent properties in the area, there's an abundance of parking in this locale right here, all within walking distance. And the goal is to utilize some of that parking where these agreements can be reached so that staff doesn't have to park here. I mean, that's the goal, that's the hope. I mean, they understand zoning, there is no required number of parking spaces for a school. That's the ordinance. I understand and I respect those concerns. We've put as many spaces as we can in here now without going to the extreme of, paving half of their existing playground, because that's the only way you would be able to do it, get circulation to work. The 17 and a half foot drive aisle is, standard cars are 6 feet, 7 feet wide. Typically, an 18-foot wide road is a common width for a low travel, road. 2 cars, there is enough room for 2 cars to get by. Fire trucks are 12 feet at the widest, so there is enough width down that roadway to get an emergency vehicle. In terms of what the other options are, getting a sidewalk in, et cetera, with this expansion, it's going to negate the need to have students walking from down at the other site down here. Yes, there will be some parents that drop their child off here and have to walk in, but that's always going to be a condition. But that need to funnel children into the site from sidewalks on Pomeroy or elsewhere should be alleviated once both those facilities are combined. And the only way to put a sidewalk in here is to eliminate all of these spaces and potentially some of those. I guess the cost benefit, looking at that, how many people are going to be using that sidewalk, and is it really going to make that much of improvement? I think it was the project determination that the need for parking outweighed the need for a sidewalk. That, the goal was to try and provide as much parking within the bounds of where we can to, and improve that.
Mr. Schreiber?
So just, just a modest counterbalance. I'm concerned about circulation also, but it's in the school's best interest to provide the appropriate number of parking spaces. In other words, they would basically choke themselves if they didn't have enough parking spaces for basically their stakeholders. And then similarly, it's in their best interest to provide, a safe environment. So I just see a scenario that makes it, so the school's been here for, I'm sorry, I can't remember how long has the school been here?
The school is 40 years old and has been in this building since, I think it's 86.
So I would assume in those, I'm sorry, I can't do the math right off, but I assume in those number of years that have there been, accidents on site?
I have been the head of school for 3.5 years now, and we've never had any incidents. We have a sign that reads 7 miles per hour. We did that on purpose because it gets people's attention and reminds them that they're in a zone with children. I have looked through all the records of grievances and suits, and I haven't seen anything that lists any kind of accident. We are absolutely committed to providing our families with a safe and really an easy experience at the school. We're absolutely willing to have our staff have to walk to create that. In fact, we call it the Heart Healthy program, is how I've been selling it. Yes, that's exactly accurate.
Yeah, so then maybe my concern really has to do with, I'm sorry, what's the maximum age the school goes until?
6th grade. 6th grade,
So 6th grade.
is age 12.
So, but can students themselves ride their bikes to school, or can they walk?
We've had one student walk, and we do have one student right now who rides his bike with his mom. We haven't had anybody come unattended.
But there's no ban on walking to school? Or?
There's no ban on walking.
No, it's because,
Sure.
If you could use the microphone.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure, I'm sorry.
I'm aware of schools that actually have a ban on biking or walking because it's considered unsafe.
We do not. We have a policy, a transportation policy that requires that students actually show up with an adult
Okay.
who drops them off.
So I guess I get a little bit, and I understand the school is being expanded, but I get a little bit worried about sort of revisiting a situation that seems to work okay and having restrictions that, in a sense, doesn't enable the school to thrive. That's my concern.
If I could just respond. I mean, part of my sidewalk thinking is that this is a village center, and that going from what's now 40 students on that site and 40.
Excuse me, one second. Excuse me, could members of the audience be quiet, please?
And then going up to potentially 120 students. I would hope over time we would be drawing from the village center, especially as more development happens there, and that children and their parents, maybe accompanied, would walk, would ride bikes. And so I'm thinking more of a sidewalk connection system, not just for the entry drive-in. I agree with your comment. I don't want to make life any more difficult for the school. I'm very pro school and daycare. I have a brief period worked in one. It wasn't my best job, but I wouldn't want to do anything hard. But I think the past accident record isn't necessarily a guide. I think it's our job to give this the best look possible for the expansion of the site and whatever uses happen there over time. And there probably are some solutions. They may not be the preferred or ideal from a cost, and for different reasons, but I know where you pointed to the playground, there's also an extensive play area in the back and quite a bit of property here, so I think there is room to be creative. And I wanted to raise my concern and then hear comments back from everyone else, and maybe I could be convinced that it's absolutely great the way it's proposed.
I wanted to just, as long as we were talking about parking, I thought I'd check the zoning bylaw and the standard for parking. There actually is a standard. It's that there need to be adequate parking spaces to accommodate under normal conditions the cars of occupants, employees, members, customers, clients, and visitors.
It was our understanding that that could also include surrounding areas. And
Well, if I may, David, the one good thing about being that I'm a resident just down the road is that it's a little bit of a village in that the UMass bus, there's two different bus routes that come. One's on Pomeroy Lane, the other's on 116. That's a plus. There is, I believe, underused parking in the whole, on the four corners at the various little mini malls, whatever they are. And perhaps we look at the Pomeroy Village as more of a priority after North Amherst and Atkins Corner, because with Montessori wanting to infill, and make it more dense, it's a natural segue. Because my pet peeve is the sidewalk that goes nowhere. It ends in the middle of a pole. It does at the intersection, literally in the middle of the lamp. It's the traffic light when they put the sidewalk goes right into it, and the other end it just goes nowhere. So I would love to see the sidewalk to nowhere improved. So
Go to Montessori.
Mr. Rosner.
A couple of things. Regarding parking, it's not uncommon, and there is precedent, when an applicant comes in and needs parking off-site, to have agreements with neighboring property owners for those parking arrangements. Even while I've been on the board, we've approved a project like that, but the applicant came in with signed agreements already as a part of the application, so perhaps that could be something that you would consider to augment your application. On another area, I'm wondering if anyone from the Kingdom Hall is here to speak about the need for easements on the property or otherwise?
Richard, I'm sorry, Mr. Rosner, we'll get to the public comment after.
Okay, well, when we get to that, I'll be interested. Maybe you can comment on that. Have you had some discussions with your neighbors about procuring easements and how that might work? It might not only be your immediately abutting neighbors, but a couple of properties away if the water flow is going that way. What sorts of discussions have you had along these lines?
actually, Kevin Campbell, who is our, he's supporting the project as a consultant, spoke with Paul Fisher, who happens to also serve the school as our cleaner and lives in this house, which is 2 doors down from us, and is a member of Kingdom, is an elder at Kingdom Hall. And so I actually, can I ask you to speak to that? What? And actually, I think originally this property was actually Paul Fisher's.
Right.
Thank you. If you could identify yourself, please.
I'm Kevin Campbell, and I'm a consultant for the Amherst Montessori School on the project.
Mr. Campbell, before you comment, you are going to be talking about a conveyance of an interest in real property here, and I don't want to compromise either party's interest. I'm just curious as to whether there are going to be major problems or whether you have a preliminary indication that something might be able to be worked out. You don't need to get into a lot of details.
I couldn't get into a lot of details because there is no, there's no indication one way or the other at this moment. There's only an indication that there's an awareness that the Kingdom Hall would like Amherst Montessori School and the Kingdom Hall to address an issue that may create future liabilities, may provide future benefits to both parties with regards to stormwater drainage. And that's really the extent of our conversation. And as we had the conversation, then, as Jeff knows, everything else sort of rose to the surface
So to speak.
soon thereafter.
Bubbles up.
Oh dear, we didn't hear that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe at this time we could hear a little bit more about the building
Yeah.
itself.
Should I turn the lights down?
I guess that's a question. I'll try to direct you
Right,
to the
right.
board. And first of all, my name is Elan Tierney. I'm an architect at Kuhn Riddle Architects, and I'm here with Rachel Chase, who's also an architect. We are very new to this project, so this has been very educational for us to learn about the site a little bit more. We started working on this, I think, less than a month ago. Montessori asked us to step into this project. They had a schematic design, which is what you saw in your package, from McClay Architects. And actually, we have that here on the computer. Why don't you just bring the plan up right now? All the way over to, one more over, there you go. And as you can see, the dark gray area that's up on the screen is the existing building, and then the addition is wrapping around it. The addition is really dictated by the setbacks on the property. It's a wet property, so there's wetlands buffer zones that we have to stay out of. So it is literally shooed into that space. There's not a lot of wiggle room. So when we took this project on, we tried not to move exterior walls much at all. So I can show you on this plan here, it's actually, and Rachel has it up on the screen, it's turned 180 degrees. So the existing building is this light green here, and it comes up to the line. There's something called the line of existing building, and you can follow it all the way across, and that's the existing building. So we have stayed within that same footprint, minor adjustments. When we did come on, there were some code issues that needed to be addressed. The accessible bathrooms weren't quite big enough. There were some program issues that hadn't really been addressed. Changing areas in the classrooms, lockers weren't completely laid out. We started to add more detail to the plan. And in doing that, what we feel is a clear delineation of circulation through the building, which is marked by all of the yellow. We've created an entry core and circulation right as you come in. The elevator originally was at the end of the building, but all the main circulation is now in this one core. And then going upstairs, maybe you could go to the second floor plan of McClay. So as you can see, it's very similar. We have the two classrooms, elementary classrooms, a central art room. the circulation core and a few office spaces facing out to the front of the building. So not too much has changed in terms of the plan. We could go to the elevations. Maybe you could bring McClay's elevations up, and I'll talk about them here. So the south, I guess it's actually the north elevation, which is at the top of this view. Can you enlarge that so the board members can maybe see it over there? Had two large gables and a small gable as the entry, and then that vertical element was the stair tower. Our effort was to simplify the massing of the building and create a little bit better symmetry, and also give the entrance a little more prominence. So that front entry there, that front gable is the entry. We still have the covered porch where kids get dropped off and picked up. In working with Amherst Montessori, we've come to learn that symmetry, balance, pattern is very important. And most important, perhaps, is that this is a home. It's meant to be a home for children, a place where children come to learn. It's supposed to look like a residential project. So that's where our efforts have been in terms of the front. And then the back, maybe we could look at McClay's real quick, and then we'll come back to this one. You can see the back. There isn't too much difference. We did simplify the roof form on the addition. It has a shed roof in lieu of that hip roof. We did move some doors around. Having all of the entries covered was important. They had a couple of little gable roofs over doors. We've clustered the doors together so that there are two classroom doors underneath this porch area, and there's a classroom door here, and the other classroom doors are under under covered areas in the existing building. So I think that kind of glosses over the changes, and I can answer questions.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, any more folks presenting for the applicant? Okay, how about more discussion among the board at this time? Open season.
I'm ready to hear any comments from the
All right,
public, but that's,
okay, at this time, we'll, if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak about this project, please come forward.
Yeah, actually.
Could you come forward and?
Hi, good evening. My name is David Sullivan.
Microphone.
I'm sorry?
You got to use the microphone.
Oh.
It's for the folks at home. We are on TV.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. First time caller.
Pull it out. Yeah.
Very good.
And if you could
I
just,
wonder if I could just briefly comment
your name.
relative to the
Your name, sir.
Your name?
property immediately east of the driveway. Yes.
Your name, please.
Oh, David Sullivan. The property immediately east of the driveway, parcel 20C-26 on your map, if I may. And I thank the gentleman for his excellent presentation, addressing a number of the concerns of the full-time residents of 37 Pomeroy Lane relative to the drainage issues. Thank you. I have just a brief comment about a couple of practical aspects of this that I hope will be part of the overall consideration by the neighbors, and with the increased volume of people here. As a matter of practice, this area right here, even with the widening of the end of the driveway, this is a right angle. And while I understand that you can't legislate good driving habits, in practicality, there is an awful lot of traffic which historically has rounded their turns into this, crossing over, in many cases, inexpensive vehicles, actually driving over a pronounced curb which exists there. The widening of the road may, the driveway may make that easier to deal with. The other matter of practicality relative to the property east of here is, it has to do with the snow removal, which simple arithmetic dictates that with a wider driveway, there will be more snow to be pushed somewhere. And the question is then, will that be something which can be managed without it landing on the property over here as a contractor pushes the snow somewhere in the northerly direction towards Pomeroy Lane? Where does it go? And in practice, this has been a bit of a problem for those of us that shovel snow in the immediate area east of there. So I think that while that's not as complicated as some of the issues mentioned, I hope in the sense of the overall smoothness of handling the increased volume of our fine young children to be educated, that we can get people in and out of there both in a safe and easy manner without adversely impacting the sidewalk which goes east up Pomeroy Lane. And I hope that the board and the applicants will just keep that somewhere in the collection of ideas.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Much easier.
Anyone else?
My name is Charles Atwood, and I live directly to the east of the property here. And I guess the one question I have is, will there be any additional lighting, light poles and so forth, put up facing possibly east and then also south?
Yes.
No, wait. Whoever's going to answer needs to use the microphone, please.
Yes, currently, I think there's minimal, if any, lighting out there now. What's being proposed is the addition of some 12-foot tall, area lights that are compatible in scale and style, to light the parking area just to improve safety, like I said before, during this time of year when children are being dropped off earlier, later in the evening, to
Could you point to the lights, please, on the map?
There is one here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in all.
Are those presently there?
No. And so, most of these are facing in the direction of the Kingdom Hall. Most of these are all full cutoff fixtures, dark sky compliant.
I just also want to say that the school's only open till 5:30, and so the lights will turn off at 6. There will be nights where we have events, but that's infrequent.
Again, the idea is not to overly light this area. It's really just to provide enough light so that cars and people can safely, navigate that area.
Just to clarify, you said 12 feet in height. In our development application report, it says 14 feet in height.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So it's a little hard to visualize how the light's going to fall, and I needed some help even from Ms. Brestrup today to figure out where the lights were, but it's great that they're downward facing, but we don't really know where the light cones are going to go.
Here, I see one.
Yeah, it's all, I colored them red.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the lights are described as standard 150-watt shoebox style luminaires, full cutoff and dark sky compliant, mounted on a 14-foot tall pole. Okay, other public comment? Yes, ma'am. Could you please come forward, or could we pass the microphone back?
On an unrelated question, is the school connected to the town sewer?
Oh, could you identify yourself, please? Your name? Your name?
Sullivan, I'm direct abutter to the school.
Thank you.
It is?
So the answer to that question about the sewer was?
Is yes, it is on the town municipal system.
And does that sewer line run out the driveway and down to Pomeroy?
Out to Pomeroy, correct.
Is it gravity fed?
Yes.
So is the school then is, or the general grade is?
I think the line out here is deeper, you know, it's minimal cover here exiting the building. There's a slope sufficient to slope to the drainage system that's in, or the storm system.
Is there town stormwater out there also?
No.
Okay, there's not. All right.
I don't believe there's.
More public comment? All right. Perhaps the board would like to discuss this among ourselves here. If there's comments or what people think about the. Maybe we could go through a couple more things here. We have some materials that were submitted by the applicant. We have a management plan that addresses trash and recycling. It states that trash and recycling is currently kept in a small covered wood shed, which is being pointed to pick up once a week. It's anticipated a larger storage shed will be needed, and is provided on the plans. Parking spaces, the total is 19 parking spaces, 10 of them being regular sized and 1 being handicapped. We heard about the lighting. Signage, the existing sign is a 16 square foot sign at the entrance, and no changes are being proposed. For landscape maintenance, grounds maintenance person will be added to the staff once the project is complete. And the snow removal is done by innovative grounds maintenance as needed. Other materials we got are a stormwater drainage report, which I think the issues in which we've discussed in detail. We received some prior site plans, the previous approvals for the site. We have copies of those, as well as we have a traffic generation report. Let's see. Again, this existing student population is 80. Under the proposed scenario, it will be 120. The building driveway exits on Pomeroy Lane. It's 390 feet east of the intersection at West Street, which is a straight road, and it's a square intersection. I'm just going to read because it's easier. An estimate is made of the existing and additional traffic that would be generated by the expansion of the facility during peak traffic periods for a typical weekday. The peak periods assumed for analysis are the times of peak traffic demand on adjacent roadways. They looked at the timing, weekday mornings and weekday afternoons, and it was concluded that under a worst-case scenario, the project would add an additional 36 vehicles per hour, which translates to 1 car every 1.6 minutes. The summary of this, which is provided by Berkshire Design Group, Mark Darnold, the increase in traffic volume, according to the study, is not significant to the daily or peak hour traffic demand as shown above, and are within the normal daily variation of traffic, will not be perceived by users of the adjacent roadways or intersections. By the way, and I skipped over this, the traffic volumes currently in the site is about 2,900 vehicles per day. and the capacity of the two-lane highway is 1,800 vehicles per hour. So apparently Podmore Lane is being underutilized.
I don't think so.
I knew you were going to.
So use it as your
The
community.
neighbors never agree on
No,
traffic counts.
it's busy.
Okay. I think, unless I'm mistaken, that is what we received on this. So if there's no further discussion from the board, I would suggest that we go through the development application report, which was prepared by staff. And we can address concerns as they come up. As I noted, there were 4 previous actions on the site, 3 special permits, and there was an appeal of the building commissioner. Looks like it's in 1990, about drainage. The setbacks, frontage, and dimensional regulations are all fall within the requirements for the RVC district. No waivers to any of that. We had a site visit, and we are short a couple of copies on the site visit report, so some members might have to share. We had our visit on, I believe it was on Monday, and we were shown through the site. It's, there were a lot of children present, which was very fun, and we were interviewed by one of them as to what we were doing there. There's not really much to add about the site visit. We walked all the way down across the area. I would like to point out that the area we observed, which is to the side of the parking lot, right, there's a basketball court there. Currently, it looks like, I mean, it has a nice low basketball hoop there. And it looks like a play, currently being used as a play area.
Tricycles.
For tricycles. And there were also a number of plastic cars parked underneath carports.
That constitutes the 19, right?
Oh, yeah. Let's see, Mr. Squire explained the site plan with a general explanation of how drainage will work. We observed the location of the drainage trench and a proposed sandbox to be used for drainage at the south side of the site. And we saw that there were not a lot of trees to be removed. There's a row of arborvitae currently to the west of the building that will come down, and one, it looked like a maple or something, that's also going to come down. But the rest of the trees are going to remain intact. If anyone who was at the site visit has other things to add. Okay. We have no requests for waivers on this project. Parking and circulation, and this has been an issue we discussed already. Currently, we have 13 parking spaces, and the application proposes to provide 20, which isn't what I remember from the other. Anyway, 10 regular spaces, parallel parking, 9 spaces around the entry circle, plus 1 handicap space. We've discussed this, and we have no comments from the fire department about how they feel about this new traffic circle. The lighting we discussed is going to be 8 new poles on just basically until 6 p.m. and they are dark sky compliant, which is more than we can say for our town lighting. Erosion control plan. We have a grading and utility plan which shows erosion control barriers to be used during construction around the driveway and the rear side of the building. We discussed the traffic impact statement. We discussed signage. The existing sign is over 4 feet in height, and our current zoning bylaw limits the height of signs to 4 feet in residential districts like this one. So this one is outside the allowable height. And I'm reading from the development application report that it says that 8.41 of the bylaw allows the ZBA to approve a sign that exceeds the height or size limitations with a special permit. But I think the planning board is actually allowed to do a special permit for signs. Am I right?
It's the ZBA, it's a special permit.
I know that this board has granted special permits for signs before.
Only as part of site
I think it says Board of Appeals. A directional or identification sign may be erected and maintained in any district where the Board of Appeals, acting under section 10.3, finds that such signs will serve the public convenience, will not endanger public safety, and will be of such size, location, and design as not to be detrimental to the neighborhood.
So this is a pre-existing non-conforming sign, am I, Christine?
My understanding is that it didn't receive a special permit when it was installed, and this portion of the bylaw has been in place for a while. I don't think it's a new sign. It's probably an oversight on the part of the school. They probably don't know about this section of the bylaw, but technically they're required to get a special permit for this sign. It's not something that the planning board needs to do themselves, but the planning board may wish to point this out to the applicant.
So pointed. It states here that we may wish to inquire about the size, materials, and design proposed for the new sign on the facade, and whether it will be visible from any point off the premises. I wasn't aware there was a sign on the facade.
We haven't actually discussed that yet. It's possible that they would like signage on the facade above the main entry gable, so that central gable there might have their logo on it. But I'm looking at Tamara because we haven't had that conversation yet. So yes, that may be a possibility. But I do not believe it would be visible from the road.
I see.
Yeah, you would have to get all the way down the driveway to see it.
Ms. Brestrup?
I think a location for the sign was shown in the site plan for the building plans, and I just wanted to note that, and also to note that this is a residential district, and as long as the sign is within 12 square feet, I believe that they don't need any kind of special permit. You may ask them to come back with a sign design if you wanted them to, but otherwise, as long as they stay within 12 square feet, they're okay.
And again, if that sign out by the roadway were less than 4 feet in height, it would be in compliance. Is that your understanding?
Well, I think it's also oversized slightly in terms of its area, so.
Oh, yes, it is, yep. Okay. All right, we have a management plan, which you've discussed already. No fire department review yet. Conservation Commission review. This is going to be heard by the Concom on tomorrow? Next week. And because it has wetlands on the site. Oh yeah, Wednesday, December 14th. The town engineer has not submitted, well, they have, this says they haven't submitted comments, but we have definitely comments from the town engineer. Architecture,
Mr. Chair, question, before we get past it, number 8, the Conservation Commission review. It says the town engineer at that time will render an opinion. Will the town engineer be rendering an opinion about drainage issues as it affects the wetlands? Drainage issues entirely?
Question.
When I wrote this report, the town engineer hadn't submitted his comments, and so I knew that the commission was expecting his comments before their meeting, and luckily you received his comments before your meeting, so that's what I was referring to.
Okay, so many of his comments will be addressed at the Conservation Commission meeting?
That's right.
Thank you.
And we did meet with them, just to be clear, we did meet with them already once. We have been before the commission at a public hearing. There were no issues aside from waiting for the town engineer's report.
All right. The architecture in this, we've seen the pictures. It's called a windows are craftsman style. Do we have information about the color and material to be used on the siding?
Currently, we're proposing a hardy plank siding. I believe the color scheme would be similar to their logo. So soft, neutral colors, but we honestly haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay, thank you. Drainage, we have a stormwater management report. And landscape plan is included, I think, as part of the materials that we received. Am I wrong? There's some new plantings to go in.
Yeah, the plantings that are being proposed are essentially within the rain garden. That's everything that's been identified on the plan. There will be some, minor foundation plantings at the front of the building. Again, those are going to be predicated on, where we finally end up with the elevations. It will be a dozen or so plants, maybe. There isn't a lot that's proposed.
Thank you. Okay, that's the end of the development application report, and the end of the materials I have to go through. I'm going to just put it out there that I think that there's a few sort of still missing pieces on this. We have questions about the drainage. The parking, and I think we had a lot of questions about the circulation, and I'd like to hear, I guess, what the general board sentiment is on this and how we might move forward.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add maybe another wrinkle, and I don't know if this is the right time, but Ms. Brestrup and I had an exchange over email today, and I just wanted to point out that under Chapter 40A, the state's zoning act, the educational use that we're reviewing has some special exemptions, and so it may narrow slightly the range of things we look at, though it was good to hear the full report. And just, Ms. Brestrup asked if I would just give the citation, and she can follow up with some more information, but just briefly, no zoning ordinance or bylaw in any city or town shall prohibit or require a special permit for the use of land or structures or the expansion of existing structures for the primary, accessory, or incidental purpose of operating a child care facility, provided, however, that such land or structures may be subject to reasonable regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures in determining yard size, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements. And then it goes on to say that the term child care facility shall mean a child care center or school-aged child care program. So I think it modifies a little bit what we usually do in a site plan review, and some of the architectural details, maybe even the sign size, may not be of concern given the educational exemption in Section 3 of 40A. So it may in some ways simplify. I don't think it solves some of the more substantive issues that we've raised, but I think it may streamline what we do.
Can you read that again? Please? Just
Okay. This is from Mass General Law 40A, the Zoning Act, Section 3, which is the exemption section, and I'm skipping over to the part of the exemption section that refers to this kind of educational use. Basically, the exemption section exempts religious institutions, educational institutions, and now they've added some farm exemptions. So because this is an educational facility, what we can review is more limited than it would be under our own zoning bylaw, site plan review regulations. So in some ways, the zoning bylaw is partly set aside where we're considering things like bulk and height and coverage, but we don't have to adhere to the letter of the zoning bylaw. And I'd be glad to read it again or pass it over to you.
I think this has come up before when we reviewed a religious facility, but my understanding is that we can't deny it on the basis of its use. In other words, but still local zoning would apply. Local zoning.
My understanding of most of what Connie read said that the town can't require a special permit for this use, did it not?
That's part of it. That's
Which
part of
is
it.
not required.
Which is not this part.
Except for the
Right.
sign, possibly.
Except for the sign, right.
But it goes on to say, only subject to reasonable regulation, ... in those areas.
Could you go through that list
Okay.
again for us, please?
Sure. However, that such land or structures may be subject to reasonable regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures and determining yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements.
Connie brought this up yesterday or today, and I had a conversation with Joel Bard, town council, about this, and he said that Connie is right, and that there are certain other things that can be looked at, and those are things that have to do with community well-being and environmental concerns, things like drainage, that would be one of them, lighting would be another one, because lighting, not so much the style of the light on the site, but what its effect is on adjacent properties. He said that parking and access would certainly be under this umbrella review, but that we're probably more limited when it comes to design reviews such as review of building architecture and that type of thing. So, in answer to the question that you're probably wondering about with regard to past practices of the board have been to treat educational and religious projects just like any other site plan review project. And there hasn't been any kind of, shall we say, discrimination, if you will, in regard to exactly what we were looking at. But now we have further information from Joe Bard that says, as Connie has indicated, there are certain things that we probably aren't able to scrutinize or have too much control over.
Thank you. And it's under the, I'm just going to step in for a second, it's under those areas that were outlined that we have our authority to do this site plan review. I actually want to ask Mr. Roslin first.
Oh, I was just going to say, since you're soliciting the feeling of the board, my inclination is to suggest we continue the hearing and ask the applicant to return with a report from Mrs. Skeels as to his concerns and as to the parking agreements that have been in place for additional parking and certain revisions to accommodate a more appropriate pedestrian and closer for people on the property.
As well as perhaps the fire department weighing in.
Yes, thank you. A fire department review of whether the. Thank you. So I will so move.
Second.
To continue the hearing.
We have a motion that's been seconded. Ms. Anderson, you should speak to the motion.
Comments? I'd like to add to what he said. Well, I had all this, I had a to-do list, and, no, but you hit most of them, and I would like to ask about the parking. When I looked at the management plan and then what I heard from the head of the school, this talks about the number of spaces, size, and everything, but the vision of the commuting, the drop-off, the, off-site parking is a little bit of a parking plan, which I'd like to have as more of a, more of a vehicle management, might even be deliveries and drop-offs, and, that sort of thing. I agree with the engineer's approval. I think there were a number of things that you all saw it lately, but I think they need to be point by point addressed. And I'd like to see in writing the issues between the main abutter to Kingdom Hall agreement about the drainage and the concern about snow removal. You have a snow plan about who does what, but where is the snow piling area? Every property has to have a place. Where do you put the snow? And I mean, if it has to be a snow removal plan, it sounds awfully formal just to say, where are you going to put the snow? I think that would help with the water and also the neighbor's concern. And I'd like to actually see the examples. Typically, we ask for examples of the lighting heads. Maybe not everybody's familiar with the language, and maybe just to see the new architects, what does the pole look like, and maybe just a rendering of how it might look going down the driveway when we look at it, in a flat detail with little tiny squares. I think that in the continuation might help the neighbors.
I will accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion.
There's a lot.
Friendly second.
So I guess I'm leaning in the direction of not continuing the public hearing. I guess my preference would be for conditional approval with the submission of many of these items to us at a later date, which in our past practice is how we typically deal with minor things, what I would consider minor, like call-outs for the light fixtures, for example. It's normally not our practice to continue a hearing when we have questions about details like that. We will instead grant a conditional approval. If we approve the project as a whole, we will grant a conditional approval and ask that the applicant come back to us to present details of things like landscape issues, light fixtures, things like that. On this project, I think there are more substantive issues than that, and I would very much like to see a stormwater management plan that has sign-off from the town engineer rather than a list of 20 questions and issues that he has with it. I would very much like to see a signed agreement with one of the properties nearby for parking. I think it's great that they're looking at reusing some of the parking that we have in excess in that area. I think that's a great direction to go in, but right now we don't have any actual indication that that's going to take place. But I think that that's a problem that can and will be solved, as I do think with the stormwater management as well. And so I'm also cognizant of the issues that were presented early in the meeting with regard to timing of the project as well. I'd hate to see them lose a year's worth of construction window on the project, or have to go out and buy and install and maintain portable classrooms for a year of education, because we weren't able to get a signed parking agreement in time for this hearing tonight. So my sense is that I think that this is a project we could approve, although I do think that they would need to come back to us before they could move ahead with the final implementation.
I agree with most of that. I think most of the things could be conditional, but I'm not sure that the drainage one isn't in that category. I'd like to know what the authority of the Conservation Commission is. What is it possible that they might say? Is it possible that they might say this is impossible or unacceptable or something? And would that have an impact on our decision? If it would, I would like to wait to hear.
Ms. Preston?
The Conservation Commission is mainly concerned with the impact of the drainage system on wetlands. So they don't so much care about, I won't say they don't care about it, but it's not necessarily in their jurisdiction to worry about flooding adjacent properties or exactly how the drainage system works. As long as there's not a negative impact on wetlands, are probably going to be okay.
But might they find that there's a negative? Might they find that? I don't know. If they would, then I would like to know that before I sign off on this. The other issue that I know that was not certain could be resolved with negotiation with the engineer. But again, I don't want to arbitrate. Was number 4, where it sounded like there was a disagreement about how much discharge should be allowed on abutting properties. And it sounded like Mr. Squires was saying, we think it's reached a level, or we're reaching a level that should be acceptable. And if I'm reading Mr. Skeel's comments, it sounds like he's not convinced that it's at that level. And so that's one that I think is possibly not, we can't be sure that they will come to an agreement. And so I would like to wait for that one to be resolved before agreeing.
Just in regards to the Conservation Commission meeting, it's my understanding that we can't have our permitting conditional on waiting for their permit. It could be that their permit might change a condition, would have to come back to us, or likewise, they might approve something and say it came to us and we said add more paving. It might force the applicant to go back to Concom, but we may want to continue, but I don't think we can do so because we're waiting on the Conservation Commission. Maybe Ms. Brestrup could clarify.
I think it's up to the board. Some boards wish to wait to hear from the Conservation Commission so that they're sure that there won't be any changes to the site plan. And some boards, are willing to go ahead and approve. What I know is that you can't have a condition in your approval that says your approval is conditional upon Conservation Commission approval.
Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking.
Mr. Rowland?
That speaks to what I was going to talk about, actually. I'm in partial agreement with Jonathan O'Keefe, and I support a lot of what our founder just spoke about. Some of the substantive issues that need to be addressed here are so substantive that they go right to the root of this project. I, too, don't want to see any unnecessary delay in getting the project going, if and when it's proper for it to get going. But this is the first time we've seen it here, and it's not like we are delaying it by putting it off. I mean, I suppose the applicants might have come in earlier if they had some materials to present. But usually, in my experience, the Conservation Commission, when they have jurisdiction over an issue such as this, in my experience, the Planning Board would wait to see whether Conservation Commission is going to approve an inland wetlands application. Think about the situation that would befall us if we give conditional approval here and the Conservation Commission were to deny the application. It would be really a mess. And I think in this particular case especially, we would be very foolish to proceed prior to hearing from the Conservation Commission on this particular issue when there's so many major drainage issues to be addressed.
Can I just speak to that a little bit,
Yes,
if I
please.
might? In regards to the Conservation Commission's, just my knowledge of what needs to happen, what their purview is that if we are creating a new point source discharge from this site to an existing, to a wetland system, then the site has to satisfy all the DEP stormwater standard requirements. But that's only if there's a new point source discharge, i.e. there's a new outlet to the wetlands. Because we're utilizing the existing outlet and going to the existing system, their review of that system is limited to matching what we need to at that outlet location. They don't have any jurisdiction over that water. I mean, it's very clear in the DEP guidelines that, if the point source discharge, a new point source discharge is being created, then they have jurisdiction over the stormwater system. And
This touches on another point I wanted to make, which is that a lot of the outflow appears to be related to approval with third parties who are not a part of this process right now. And I know from my experience, negotiating easements and drainage easements in particular is going to take some time. We don't have any indication. We have some indication that the current system as it's been designed is not according to the permits that were previously approved. And it needs to be either revised or new easements need to be developed, or maybe both. And as we heard, there haven't even been substantive discussions yet about how to do this with these other parties, these third parties. I think it's quite premature to be giving any kind of approval to this project with such a substantive issue lying out there.
I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that by January 4th, when you have the next hearing, those issues probably aren't going to be resolved. They're not going to be legal agreements, I doubt, in place in a matter of weeks, given the holiday schedule. In all reality, if this is going to be conditioned on all these agreements being in place, both for the drainage, which, again, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but what it comes down to is the fact that, you know, this drain line was not constructed according to plans. And had it been, this would be a non-issue. Most of these plans would not be an issue because all this does across this property is just a drainage line across that property. It doesn't impact their system at all.
It's my understanding that actually the bulk of the issues are about the property to the north and east and how the current driveway and drainage requirements are inadequate, especially in the winter.
Sure.
As they stand.
Right.
I think it's both. I think it's
Yeah.
also the one that Jeff was talking about. But
Yeah, you both, yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, to me, that's kind of a massive issue, you know, the easement, particularly the easement issue that you're talking about, because it seems like the town engineer, you know, won't approve unless that easement is in place or that there's an alternate, you know, there's a plan B. And so I'm not, is there a plan B if the easement can't be acquired?
There aren't any real options. I mean, because we're relying on gravity to drain this stormwater system,
Yeah.
that's the only place to go. There are no other options. And it's in everybody's best interest, both in terms of the kingdom and the school, to reach an agreement, because there is liability going both ways. You know, they're taking stormwater from their parking lot. Some of this water is going toward this property. So, God forbid an oil spill happen on this parking lot, it's going directly into the school system. There needs to be an agreement and understanding between the two that what those limitations are and who's responsible for what.
I just would like to ask about the construction schedule a little bit. I understand you wanted to start building in March. What effect would continuing this to January 4th have on that schedule? How would it hold it up, if at all?
Kevin could probably speak to it more than I can. I think January 4th makes things, yes, it makes things tighter. It constrains things a little bit. It may impact things a little bit financially, but I think it may be workable. I think where we run into the issue is if we need to have all these, you know, if it's conditioned on having all these agreements and easements in place, that's not likely going to happen in all reality by that time. You know, I think some of the parking related issues, they don't know how many spaces they're going to need to lease from somebody until we have a site plan approved, until we know how many spaces we've got on site. You know, it's sort of the cart before the horse. I don't know, you know, if what I'm hearing is that, you know, the preference is to reduce this to 9 spaces or 10 spaces and put a sidewalk in instead, then that means that they've got to look for some additional spaces elsewhere. You know, if they're going to be leasing spaces, they've got to know how many spaces they need to lease, and until they have a plan that, you know, shows how many spaces they've got on site, they're going to need this number of spaces off site. We can't answer that question.
Can I just speak a little bit on that too? So if it gets pushed past January 4th, we have to look at modulars. So just because the way that we have the timeline, it's incredibly tight. But we have a construction manager who's working with us on it. Our agreement is that we can get him in the building for March 15th, and that therefore we can be in the building for September.
So there are no shovels in the dirt before January 4th?
No, there are no shovels in the dirt before January 4th.
Mr. Rosner?
Well, if I might, I mean, even if we didn't continue it, but there were all these conditions on approval, there wouldn't be.
Right.
But I'd like to point out, the architects have only been on the job less than a month. This is a very early part of this process, and you know, an applicant, I think, has a certain responsibility to meet all the requirements of an application.
I would agree with
I think it's a good faith application. I think we're going in the right direction. But I mean, it's not just a few conditions that we're talking about as we apply to other conditional permit approvals. These are some of the substantive issues underlying this application.
Can I just respond to that real quickly? We actually were working with McClay Architects for quite a while on this project, and we've had a relationship and been working with Berkshire Design Group for, I want to say, a year now. And so this is not like a flash in the pan. We have...
I didn't mean to imply that.
No, I understand, but I just want you to be aware that we've actually been working on this project since I came on board. We hired a director of development when I came on board, which was 3.5 years ago, and we've been intensely working on an on-site option for this for a good 6 months. So we're doing everything we can to get all of our ducks in a row. And so.
Mr. O'Keefe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my comment was that, given what we've heard about the schedule, I guess I would support continuing the hearing. I was just thinking about whether it made any sense for us to consider another meeting before then. But if they think that they can work it in, even though it means that the schedule is tighter with a January 4th hearing, I guess I would support that.
We still have a motion on the table here, and I guess one thing I want to just flesh out a little bit, either before or after we vote on the motion, is the issue of whether, in general, we want to allow this parallel parking along the road, or whether we want to try and impose a sidewalk requirement. And I'll just say that I would propose allowing the parallel parking rather than changing it to a sidewalk. Mr. Schreiber?
I guess I would want to hear from the fire department on this, just because there was silence from the fire department, right? So it's not, we haven't heard anything, right?
That's right.
And I don't know enough about how they would perceive this, but 12-foot fire, cars parked there, 12-foot fire truck could get stacked up there pretty quickly, and I could see, that would be my preference, to actually even delay that comment until, but given parallel parking versus a sidewalk, I'd pick parallel parking, but I want to hear.
Okay, I think,
Sorry, just to follow up on that, though, if we're going to postpone the public hearing, or continue the public hearing now, I'd like these folks to be able to walk out of here with a concrete sense of what our expectations are for them to deliver on January 4th. So if we don't help them out by telling them whether we want parking or a sidewalk, then we're going to go into that January 4th. They're going to come back here and face the potential problem of us still not agreeing with where they are on that. So I think the board should give them some guidance on what our expectations are.
Ms. Kruger?
And Ms. Brestrup, you had your hand up before me, but I don't want to cut you off, but I can't help you there.
Sometimes the board has asked for letters of agreement with regard to parking. So we don't actually have to have the agreement in place, but if you have a letter that indicates that somebody is willing to agree you know, to satisfy the off-site parking issue, if the applicant could get a letter from one of the adjacent landowners saying that we are willing to enter into a lease for so many spaces. It's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Two things. One, I guess I wasn't trading sidewalk for parking. I wanted both, and I didn't think going down to 9 was not my intention, and I don't have a design solution. But I was wondering on the easement issue, maybe rather than requiring the drainage easement as some kind of condition or expectation for January 4th, if we could have it more, that things be resolved with the town engineer and make, whether it's an easement or something else, that sort of put it back to the town engineer, and maybe, if possible, the town engineer could attend the January 4th meeting. So if there's another solution or whatever, because, well, two things. I just think it doesn't gain them enough time to get the easement. So sort of a problem. And also, if we make it one of our conditions, it may have some monetary implications to the negotiation. I'd rather we could find another way to wrap it in with approval of the town engineer.
I guess the real issue, if I can just jump in for a second, would be that if the easements are not in place before construction, actually, you know, the easements have to be in place before construction can begin. I mean, they have to be. You can't say, oh, we'll deal with the drainage.
Right.
The easements later, but we gotta get started digging up the site right now, and that's not gonna work.
It would be incredibly high risk for them to do that.
But
And I would suspect that, you know, I would envision that it could be conditioned on the notion that those easements and those parking agreements shall be in place prior to construction. You know, like I said, the improvements, the drainage changes that I've made on this set of plans as of this afternoon were everything that Jason and our office spoke about there, and I wish he had an opportunity to respond to, you know, us actually putting that on paper. We talked about it. He said he couldn't, I mean, understandably, he can't comment on anything that isn't in front of him. We did exactly what we talked about, and, you know, our feeling is that, you know, it's addressed all of his concerns aside from, you know, seeing these easements get put in place. So the hope was that, you know, it could be conditioned such that we satisfy, you know, all his concerns, you know, which we feel we have, but he obviously needs to review it and approve of it, and then that we would reach agreements and have them in place for off-site parking and for stormwater drainage, that, you know, on a very basic level, it's, you know, fairly easy conditions.
Thank you. I think at this time, I think we might like to move to a vote on this motion that's on the table to continue this public hearing to January 4th, subject to, and to give the applicant some homework as we've been discussing. Does anybody want to weigh in further discussion before we have a vote?
I'm sorry.
Mr. O'Keefe?
Did you want to discuss what that homework would be before the vote, or would that come afterwards?
We've discussed it pretty thoroughly, don't you think?
Sure. I guess I would like us to conclude by enumerating
Okay.
specific items. And so I'll lay out there for consideration a letter from the town engineer that indicates his approval of the revised plan that he will have seen by that point. I'd like him to be satisfied on all points and not just have a representation that the plan satisfies him. That would be the most significant one as far as I'm concerned. And the other one that I would specify would be either a lease agreement or at least a memorandum of understanding with regard to leasing off-site parking spaces for the employees.
Mr.
O'Keefe, would you accept just a letter as expressive?
Yeah, that's what I meant by memorandum of understanding, yes.
Mr. Schreiber?
Can I suggest that we say not all points from the town engineer, but most substantial points, because there will always be the standard conditions?
Sure, like having no substantial or no substantive objection.
Okay. Is the applicant clear on what we're asking for?
Before, was the fire department comment?
Fire department was mentioned.
Oh, okay, was that part of what you were enumerating? You were very nicely enumerating them.
Yes, those were the main points of concern for me.
For you, okay.
Yeah, we had questions about from the town engineer, letter from town engineer. Letters of understanding regarding parking. We'd like to see some more thought going into the circulation through the site, and what you're gonna do about getting people up and down the driveway. We'd like an update on the easements. We'd like to know more about where you're gonna put the snow, I think. And, more information about the lighting. Is there anything else?
The fire.
Fire department.
Sign off.
In terms of, pedestrian access, I guess we would need a clear direction from you then, what your recommendation would be, because we've only got this much width in which we can do anything with. So it's either going to be parallel parking, or it's gonna be a sidewalk. We've got 8 feet.
Yes, would you like to say something, please?
Yeah,
Please
just
do.
since you're
If you could take the mic.
Okay.
And who are you?
Early Rose, I'm a parent at this school. And I just was gonna say, in terms of access, if it's pedestrian access, does it have to come down the driveway? That was
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
my question, because you
good
did point out the land, and I guess the concern is with the wetlands, so will a walking path be considered something that's disturbing to the wetlands? And if not, then I don't think you can make a nice path.
It's up to Concom.
Pardon me? Up to Comcom.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only, like I said, we haven't proposed to move this edge of pavement specifically because of potential impacts to the wetlands. So anything that we need to do is going to be on this side, otherwise we're gonna start impacting and getting into wetland replication and those types of issues. You know, this, for all intents and purposes, is a drainage ditch that really shouldn't be flagged as wetland, but it is what it is. We have 8.5 feet. We've got an 17.5-foot drive aisle, which, you know, I think we're really not comfortable making that any narrower. So we've really got 8.5 feet in which to either put a sidewalk or provide parking.
So let me ask you this. What's to the, I guess, in the way you have that oriented now, what's directly to that side of that? Is that
This is
flat?
lawn.
That's flat land?
That's lawn, yes.
Okay, so maybe when you're negotiating your drainage easements with the Kingdom Hall, you could also try to negotiate a pedestrian access easement over that portion of the land to generate a walking path.
Yes, because didn't I read that you were going to make that there was an arrangement, I'm looking for the head of the school, I don't know where she went, but for evening activities where parents might come, that they might use that parking lot, and how would they get there?
I think requiring a pedestrian access easement or something to that effect, I think gets a little bit more complicated, because now we're starting to change drainage patterns, we've got more impervious, we've got, there's other things to consider. I mean, it's not as simply saying, yes. I mean,
Just trying to think outside.
can we, no, and I mean, I think in all reality, walking down that lawn, that strip, if that's where people are gonna walk. This edge is right at the top of that ditch. This is the only place to walk.
Yes.
I also need to speak to this. So, that we have approached the elders at the church several times about crossing through their property with the children, because we're concerned about them walking along, even on the sidewalk along Pomeroy. And they have always deferred to the elders in New York, and have, it's always come back as a no. And we've repeatedly reached out to them on different fronts, and they have let us use their parking at events, but will not put that in writing.
Thank you. All right. We need to, yes, Mr. Carson.
I understand the desire to have a sidewalk, and I'm a big sidewalk advocate, but I think, I would say due to the constraints of this property, I just don't think it's possible. And I would be willing to let it go, considering the unique situation I have here.
It wouldn't be a deal killer for me either.
No, me neither. And I think the fact that the children aren't going to be walking from the annex down the driveway, it's going to be the faculty and staff, they should know how to walk down the driveway.
And also, these are parent the driveway, they know very well
Yeah.
the safety issue at hand.
Right.
Could make the driveway one way.
Or
Exit through wetlands.
we can reduce the speed limit to 6.
Yeah, good idea.
So we
Yeah.
removed that from the list?
All right. We do technically and realistically still have a motion on the table to continue this to January 4th.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I just wanted, you're gonna go over the points, but I just wanted to clarify my understanding of what you're looking for your.
Sure, of course.
So, number one, drainage, a letter from, the town engineer saying that all substantial items have been addressed. Number two, parking, letters of agreement with adjacent property for additional parking. Three, circulation, which we are talking about sidewalk, but perhaps a pickup and drop-off policy at a school.
Sure.
Would address the safety. Easement agreements, which we're not sure that is possible by January 4th.
It won't be possible.
5, snow pile areas indicated. And 6, comments from the fire department.
And 7,
Lighting.
lighting.
Can I ask for clarification?
Of course.
Just looking for what you're looking for as far as snow removal. Clarification.
I want somebody to go on the map and say, the plow's gonna push it here, and it's gonna be piled up here. If we have 3 feet of snow, then it's gonna have to be, go over here, and if we have to use a bucket loader, we'll pick it up and put it on the truck and take it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it won't be obstructing the sidewalk on the corner.
Okay, all right.
Snow storage area.
Well, basically contained within the site.
Yeah, something. yeah.
Typically what we would do is show areas as.
Yeah, you dot a snow pile. Yeah.
Call the question. All in favor of continuing this meeting, public hearing until January 4th? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Do you want to say what time?
At 7:05.
AM or PM?
Thank you for your patience.
Well, thanks very much. We'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. So if the applicants could please be relatively quiet leaving the room, because we're going to move on to other matters. And we'll take a 3-minute break.
This is everything for this. I have to go, I'm gonna go walk that site now. I'm curious.
Complicated.
Yeah.
They should buy the neighbor, they should just buy one.
They're really good neighbors. You don't even know they're there.
Yeah.
And I have to say about the sign, I live on the road. I can't even see the sign.
Is that great?
I would say like the sign was a non-issue for us. Let it lie. Let it lay.
Should have unscrewed that before you.
What am I signing? I'll sign some easements too.
Is there me to
Just standing up. Let my knee talk.
Well done. Just kept the cats in order.
Just, do we have anything unusual on this agenda? Just, if we can just look over this. I want to.
We have Mr. Olson.
Yes, I've just been patiently waiting.
Taking the master plan, that can take 1 minute for them to just sort of introduce the topic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do anything about that.
These I will go
These are just
quickly.
acknowledging that you've received them. Attorney General forms, you have to sign those, that's not a big deal.
Can I sign them now?
Discussion- No, everybody has to sign.
Oh, right.
Discussion of town meeting, you don't have to discuss that unless Mr.
wants to. And Jonathan's not here. Water supply, Jason Skills has informed us that the Water Supply Protection Committee should have a representative from the planning board. So that's just introducing the topic and think about that.
Okay.
Acknowledging receipt of planning commission journal, upcoming board meet schedule, you can forget about that, I just put that on there so we can keep track.
We're gonna skip committee reports.
Skip some of the reports, and we do have an A&R.
We have an A&R.
And I have a list of ZBA applications, I can just run through it quickly.
Any,
And that's nothing.
nothing for us? Yeah. Okay. All right, that happened quick.
Try to get out of this.
Mr. Olson, if you'd like to come ahead and get yourself set up at the table, we can hear you as soon as everyone's back. Thank you so much for waiting so patiently.
So I'll pass one out to each.
Oh, my.
Very optimistic. Where's the dartboard? Where's your dartboard? So we can throw the dart.
Fish farm.
I'm a very simple man.
Welcome to the club.
Seeing 5 minutes of breaking down, and then I know how much you're upset.
You can have all the time you need to get through this, so take your time and let us know where you're at. We should be ready in just a minute.
So you're the fish farm guy?
Yeah.
I don't see much porpoise in this.
Oh, no.
That's what the name of the farm is, Off the Hook Farm.
Much
You're gonna pay
porpoise.
your workers scale?
Oh, no.
It's worse.
It's
You're gonna pay
making
your
bad,
workers scale?
make bad puns over here. We have to start. Save me, save me.
What do they, what's their pay rate per hour? A fin?
Oh, God.
What's their pay rate per hour? A fin? The
He's
workers?
making bad fish jokes.
You know, this farm here, I'll tell you.
No, you can't tell me
No.
that. You gotta talk to the whole board.
Yeah, he's just making silly
I'm just
jokes.
making jokes.
You must know my
You're gonna pay your workers scale, right?
scale, scale.
Unfortunately, I guess I can't tell
There's
you.
just something fishy about this whole conversation. Cousin David always said the value of a pun is its wit, not its humor.
I guess.
If you went to that school too.
Great for you. Never just totally over the things. Asians just.
They couldn't get the humor.
No,
the
Asian.
pun. No? Really?
Yeah, after living here 10 years.
So just looking at the clock, is it possible that
Oh, I'm tired.
How much time do you think you'll need, Mr. Olson?
I'm going to actually keep it short and sweet.
Please keep
I
us
don't know,
here.
we have a substantial amount of public comment on your proposal, so.
John would like to go to his recommendation.
Depend upon you people.
Okay, well, can you do it in 10 minutes? 15? And we'll wait for our town staff member to come back. She takes the minutes.
No. I'm going to.
do we know how these are painted? Do you know how this is a planning board?
this
Chris, are
one.
you ready to go? Can you give us a little history about how this is before us, please?
Yes, we were approached by Mr. Olson, Ray Olson, a few months ago, and he said that he is interested in this former bioshelter site on Sunderland Road, which had been used as a fish farm and also to grow hydroponic basil, I believe. That has gone into disrepair, as you might know, passing by. And Mr. Olson is going to talk to you about rehabilitating, renovating the site to do a similar kind of process. He's interested in cleaning it up and producing fish there as well as hydroponic vegetables. So he spoke with us, he met with the select board. I think he has a plan to meet with the Conservation Commission if he hasn't done so already. And he's here to introduce himself to you and just give you an overview, an informal overview of what his plans are so that when he comes in with an application, you'll know what it's all about.
Thank you. Mr. Olson.
My name's Ray Olson. I'm from Norfolk, Mass. Basically what I'm doing is, like Chris said, here to introduce myself and kind of find out some feelings on what your feelings are for the bioshelters. What I did was that I just put together a small picture folder of what it used to be. I guess that's what it used to be, and where it's at as of a couple months ago. I've been negotiating with Ken Bertram, the owner of the property, and actually it's been very difficult negotiating with him because with the economy that we live in, the people, the scrap people have really just created havoc on it, even more than, just the age of it. Many things disappeared. For instance, 22,000 square foot building with absolutely no wire left in it at all. They tore everything out of it. What I feel in my heart is that, I look at the pictures of it in the past, and I feel that we can bring it to the minimum of what it was, and also create a teaching facility. I've been working along with Craig Hollingsworth, Dr. Craig Hollingsworth at UMass, a consultant, actually a few different consultants on aquaculture and hydroponics. Basically, what we want to do, or what I want to do, is I want to do a high-end product. I got a background in culinary arts, and I teach healthy eating habits. I had a store, Olson Seafood, and Specialty Foods, where I actually sold game meats, heart-healthy meats, all different types of diseases.
Maybe you could move on to what you plan to do with the site, please.
Basically, as you can see from at the end pictures, is the first thing is a major cleanup. After the cleanup, what we would do is, I think it's the fourth page, is a diagram of some greenhouses. There were greenhouses that in place, they belong to UMass. We would actually kind of put those back in place. There's some sheds that were in the middle, or they are in the middle. We're going to remove the sheds, put in greenhouses. We will do aquaponics, 4 quad with a different types of hydroponics in each greenhouse. Do, like I said, high-end product. What we will do is, I guess in my heart, make it as picture perfect as we possibly can. I do believe if you do something, you do, that's the way you're supposed to do it. Do it the best you can. The building, I guess in a day and age, it was a building that was, came from Israel, from what I heard. That building will actually be reconstructed into just a conventional building. You're not going to have a bubble, as I see it, you know. And then I'm going to have to worry about redo it or whatever. So basically what's going to end up happening is instead of a big plastic bubble, you're going to have kind of like a manufacturing. The actual footprint there right now is 22,000. There are concrete wings that hosted the outside supports. Those are large footings. So we will actually go out to the outside wings, create more area for more tanks, and also the hydroponics. There will not be, I think it was 56 feet high. It will not be that. It will be tops maybe 24 feet, 26 feet, somewhere in that area. We're looking at different aspects to do with that building. That building right now is just going to be cleaned up. You know, you can see going to the end of it, the last 2 pages of where that building is now. And it's just in shambles. So I guess basically what I'm asking is what you people have for feelings of this going back into an agricultural facility, aquaponics actually. And the other good thing is we have a very large amount of people who are very interested in taking part in this facility. We're going to take in, actually, I know about 6 to 8 different scientists that want to work at the facility, kind of seeing where, I think they knew where it was before. They want to see where I want to go with it. The facility will be a green facility, very energy efficient, looking at doing the roof of that big building is actually a huge solar panel. It has hydro lines going all through it. So we will utilize the roof of the big building to create hot waters and stuff of that nature. We will install an agri-lab and work along with UMass for sludge, any of the byproducts, waste fish. I'm actually working on trying to get the contact for the Stockbridge, I think, actually owns a horse farm on the left-hand side as you're going up 116. We want to bring up the waste from the horses. They'll go into an agri-lab, and we will actually add high nitrate, which comes from the fish, and create hot water, heat, and whatnot. Different ways of heating the different tanks that are in the facility.
So I think I speak for the whole board when I say this is very interesting, and I think that we would all like to see something happen with that property, because it is a shambles, and we've all driven by it and seen it. Does anybody from the board have comments for Mr. Olson on this? Ms. Kruger?
Just really to second what you said, I've been through bioshelters when it was in its heyday, and it was really a source of pride for the town as aquaculture. And I think for increased tax base, jobs, and productive use of that site, and the town's support of, my support of agriculture, I commend you for taking this on. I think there are a lot of challenges, and you're just starting out, but expect if you continue on, you'll possibly be back to us. I don't know what permits you'll need, but I wholeheartedly support the reuse of the site for the type of use you're talking about, at least in concept.
Okay, so unfortunately, I think that this, until your project's more developed, I think unfortunately due to time constraints, I'm gonna have to cut you off.
Okay.
But we have your materials, and when you do acquire the site, right, or lease it, and you come up with some concrete plans and are ready to go, we'll be ready to hear you.
Okay.
Okay?
Look forward to
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Yeah,
very,
thank
very
you.
much for that.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda, we have 2 letters that we received from the PGPC. I don't know if you want to talk about these, or I can.
Go for it.
It's very quick. We just received a response to our notification that we adopted the memorandum of agreement for promoting regional action on growth management and valley vision and regional land use plan for the Pioneer Valley, end quote. They received our, it says that on October 27th, the full PVPC voted to adopt the Valley Vision Memorandum of Agreement. And I don't know, Mr. Schreiber, you want to say anything on that, or should we move on?
Move on.
The other thing that we received was just a group notification they received our technical assistance response. And they're going to evaluate our request, and they expect to be able to serve 3 community requests for free technical assistance in the coming year. Next. Topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours before the meeting. Chris?
Were you going to talk about the master?
Did I skip right over that? I did. I'm so sorry.
Let's move that to the end of the meeting.
So.
May I just say a few words of introduction?
Absolutely.
Jonathan Tucker, initially this had been on your agenda for tonight, and it was going to be more of a full sort of public debate about the Gateway Visioning Report and incorporating it into the master plan. Jonathan has since then determined that there are several elements that he suggests that you consider incorporating into the master plan. There's the Valley Vision update, there's the Gateway part of the report, there's the 2010 survey of Amherst residents over the age of 50. I wasn't aware of that one. And the sewer extension master plan. So Jonathan suggested that you determine a date for which you would consider incorporating all of these items into the master plan, and also if you wanted to briefly discuss how you would do that, and whether you want us to put something in the newspaper, public notice about this hearing, if you think it rises to the level of requiring a public hearing.
Okay.
If you want us to publish a notice. So that's my introduction, and now, I don't know if you want to hear from Mr. Cool about Gateway Vision.
Sure, let's hear from Mr. Cool. That would be great.
Well, since I'm the John Cool, Precinct 2, and Chair of the Amherst Redevelopment Authority, since I'm your last entertainment item, I'll digress and go back to your previous item where you didn't ask for any public input. But wouldn't it be wonderful to see something good happen at another, pardon the expression, gateway to town, where now we have just a shambles, as you all noted, out on 16. And also, on the, just to comment on that, on one other aspect of that, it's a vast project, and we should all keep in mind that the
person who started it originally is and was and is recognized as something of an expert in the field. And so whoever endeavors to stick their toe into that, again, should be well-informed and well-financed. Updating the master plan. It's obviously you have another, you may have another way of addressing this at some other point, and that's fine, but I just want to make a couple of points. And that would be the dollars invested. They were ARA dollars, $30,000 in the consultant process, and a lot of personal and town effort in the explorations and so on and so forth. The report is valuable in so many ways because it was a thorough process. It documents the process, but not just the visioning process, how we got to it, and some useful action steps, several of which, as you well know, are now actually underway. And it serves to be, it deserves to be in the master plan because it serves as a template, I think, for what an individual project or area under consideration can do to attempt to meet the goals of the master plan. And I would then also want to note that one of the results of the master plan, besides a couple of studies that are going on right now, which are going to provide useful information for you all and for the citizenry in the future, and that being the marketing plan and a traffic study, by the way, being underwritten by UMass, is also the fact that the university's master plan is now being done with a fair amount of consultation with the town and public input. Something that, had we not gone through the process of the gateway visioning, might have been overlooked or might have been less readily considered. So I think it's got a lot of useful byproduct, and it will be most useful if it becomes part of the permanent document that is the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. I'd like to point out that we have all received a copy of the I think we all received a copy of the gateways. And I would urge everyone to hold on to their paper copy so that we don't have to print out ones when we discuss this in more detail. Did anyone from the board have questions for Mr. Poole about this?
This doesn't have to be answered now. I mean, if there's going to be a public hearing, that might be the appropriate place to answer. But I'd like to just ask if, one of the things that I will ask, that I will want to know when we consider incorporating it in the master plan is, to what extent would you consider that this plan answers the question with finality about where the boundaries of the district are? In other words, if by adopting this and we saying, yes, we agree that the boundaries are as the consultant has recommended, or might, you know, if we in the future might want to expand our conception of what the downtown is or the gateway district is, if by adopting this plan, are we setting up a conflict? And that's just something to think about, and let's talk about it.
Sure. I'm particularly glad to have had the opportunity to speak to you tonight, because if your follow-up to this is in January, I won't be around. But no, I don't think it's a conflict, because I think all of the talk about boundaries of the Gateway project were left very flexible. In fact, as you may all remember, the public process actually extended the boundaries toward town in ways that going in, neither the consultant nor the redevelopment authority had envisioned. So, you know, I think that is very flexible. It's the process and the means by which we reach conclusions and the kinds of conclusions we reach that I think have the greatest value for, you know, archival value, if you will.
Thank you. Mr. O'Keefe?
I'm wondering whether it might be possible to distill this to some degree if we are going to consider putting it in the master plan. To me, this isn't actually a plan as such, as much as it is a report on the process and the discussions that took place and some recommendations for things to do now, some of which have already been overtaken by events. And so my preference is to keep the master plan tightly focused on the areas that are relevant to it. And so as part of that, I'm also not crazy about the idea of dumping a bunch of other reports into the master plan, as Ms. Brestrup referenced a moment ago. I think we should be judicious in what we consider putting in there. So I would be comfortable putting this in there or putting in some version of this, but I would feel better about it if it were a little bit more aligned with the structure of the master plan and not just the process description and things like that, which the master planning process itself had an extensive public process, but that wasn't reflected in the master plan itself. And so I'd just like to see a bit more compatibility of structure and a document that really fits into the master plan so that we're not diluting the content.
No, I'm in complete agreement, and I don't, I guess I would ask then at this point, is that something you would like the redevelopment authority to generate?
That would be ideal, yeah.
Ms. Brestrup?
I think what Jonathan Tucker had in mind was that these other plans would be incorporated by reference, not incorporated in their entirety. So I don't know if that makes sense to Mr. O'Keefe's comments.
If I may, I understand that, and I guess I still feel the same way. I don't, there's a bunch of documents out there that the town plans for all sorts of things. In addition, we've got a transportation plan that's just getting started, and all of these will function in their own realm, but I don't think the master plan necessarily has to include every bit of documentation that the town produces. It might, in some cases, like the transportation plan, like the housing study that we just allocated funds for at fall town meeting. Those things might end up being relevant and worth including, but I think that we should just be a little bit cautious in terms of what we put in there, just so that we're not going through this every time the town generates a new report or study.
I think this is probably, the details of this discussion are going to need to take place another time because we just don't have time to pursue this any further tonight.
This will be really brief. I just want to, I agree with you, and the distillation point, of course, this might be the first distillation, so it becomes a sort of form to use or format, but just looking at survey of residents over age 50, never having seen it, and whether it's by reference or not, I think we're starting to get into a kitchen sink with all of this, and I'm worried about that too.
Does the board want to put this on agenda for a future meeting? I think without Mr. Tucker here, we're sort of lacking direction in terms of exactly what he had in mind, but we do have a piece of paper discussing it. I think that it bears discussing what ought to be added or not added to the master plan. I think that falls under our purview. Chris, how's our schedule looking for January and February?
The schedule for January only has one item on it, which is the other one we just allocated. So there's a meeting January 4th and a meeting January 18th. And then in February, which will be, so you do not have the wonderful schedule that Jonathan O'Keefe prepared for the February 1st, Wednesday, will be February 1st, and then there's another meeting on February 15th. So you could choose to do this in January, 4th or the 18th, or you could do it in February or the 1st or the 2nd. I think I would probably shy away from the 4th only because it's hard for people to assemble when they're just back from the holidays and you have to get
Mr. Rosner?
If I might suggest, maybe we can kill two birds with one stone here and allow even more time to give the ARA time to come up with the distillation of the report. it off to, say, March or April even. I don't know.
So maybe we'll reschedule our rescheduling until February.
Yeah.
At that.
Talk about it.
I just want to note that the board is not in agreement that it needs to be distilled. I would be willing to accept that as it is, and I don't think there's a problem with that, so. I just want to make sure it's not unanimous that we want to distill.
And I'm with Rob on that one, for the non-distillers.
Guess I'd probably fall into the non-distiller too.
Speaking of distillery.
We'll call you the moonshine group.
Well, so actually, if that represents a consensus view, we could say to the ARA that this the direction we
We
want
could
to
just
go in.
accept the plan
ARA
now.
what?
I expressed my thoughts, and Mr. Cool indicated that the ARA would proceed with their distillery. But if that doesn't represent what the board wants.
Distillation.
Ms. Anderson,
I was just going to throw in 2 cents over the size of the font. Can anybody do anything about that? It's
2.5?
It's at least 2, maybe 2.5. It's difficult to read, but anyway, I will hold on to it and cherish it, though.
all right. So I guess there's no clear consensus that you should distill it. Should you decide to do so, we'll disavow all knowledge of your actions.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, John.
Okay. Let's see, we did things a little bit out of order, but I think that's okay. We should try to schedule this thing, I guess, or we can just wait and put the rescheduling off till next year, which would be my inclination. Okay. Hearing no one shouting for hearing none, we'll move on. Town meeting, we've all been waiting for this one, the debriefing, which amounts to the signing of Attorney General's forms for Article 16, the conversion of the official zoning map, and Article 17, the 2 definitions from the form-based village center rezoning.
May I pass these down the line? Each article has 2 pages that must be signed, and I think they need to be signed by all of you, so please do so.
Given the time, my inclination would be to postpone the debriefing until another meeting.
Yeah,
Because
we're
this could
fresher.
go on for quite some time, especially if anyone says anything. I would propose that we put it off without further discussion. You're going to make a motion?
Could I discuss further?
No.
Could I very briefly combine my zoning subcommittee report, just because I'd at least like the board to be informed about what we're doing, because it does inform our work going forward. At our zoning subcommittee meeting tonight, we did our debriefing, which I won't detail, but we also started to lay out a schedule for preparation for Springtown meeting, which is always just around the corner. And obviously the biggest topic of discussion was what to do with the zoning articles. And so we just started to sketch out a framework for how we would deal with that. But more importantly, we had a consensus on the board that we are excited about the opportunity of making some changes to the article and getting something to Springtown meeting that we think will be supported by the community and hopefully by town meeting. And so mostly what I want to do is let you all know about that and to make sure that the board is in agreement, because I don't want to be, we laid out a schedule to move us towards Springtown meeting and getting this article back for Springtown meeting. And I want to make sure that the board supports that, or find out whether the board supports that, so that we're not working at cross purposes with the rest of the boards. And so that's why I forgot to say.
Comments? Hearing none.
Just a question as to whether transportation components are going to be thrown into it, I hope.
So yes, our intention is to work with members of the community on ideas and concerns that they had, as well as concerns that members of the board may have, and we're certainly aware of your concern there. So I would ask maybe that you look for opportunities to work with the subcommittee, maybe come to one of our meetings, or maybe deliver us some thoughts in writing that more specifically address where you would like to see those concerns fitting in, and we would be happy to take those into consideration.
Just that, because it's on scheduling, I thought we were going to have more time to discuss, and I don't want to belabor this, but why don't you go ahead, Son? There's a possibility that the board could schedule a retreat for itself to process, at least to really spend some in-depth time, not in an evening meeting. It would still be an open public meeting, but in the past, the planning boards had retreat days. And I just thought with this topic, especially after maybe more public input on some of these points, that we could really roll up our sleeves and just devote ourselves to what would or wouldn't change for the next town meeting, and really work on the form-based code in a different way than in one of our regular meetings. So I just put that out for consideration.
How does that work that would be at the meeting?
If I might, ones in the past we've had, like up at the Notch Visitor Center or at the Horse Farm at UMass. They're posted meetings. People can come, listen. They don't necessarily get to participate. It's clear. It's our time. Sometimes they're on a weekend, whatever. That's up to the board. But you just have a half day. You can have food, whatever, and just have a working session that, yes, it's open to the public to participate, or at least to observe or to be there. But it's clear what it's for. It's for the board to do its work.
Thank you. And I think we're going to revisit that when in January.
When we've had more sleep.
One final point. Since you mentioned January, I forgot to mention that we also scheduled our semi-annual zoning forum for Wednesday, that same day, Wednesday, January 4th. That'll be our next zoning subcommittee meeting. That's the meeting we have twice a year to invite the public in. They're always invited, but that's a meeting that is designed to have us listen to people's thoughts on our priorities for upcoming zoning issues. So that's Wednesday, January 4th, at 5 p.m. in the town room.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe. On the subject of meetings, there's a UMass Amherst community meeting. All are invited. This is the UMass campus planning, the presentation and discussion of the draft campus master plan. It's being held on Thursday, December 15th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the UMass Police Department Community Room. I guess that's in the new building at 585 East Pleasant Street. More information is available at www.umass.edu/CP.
I'd like to recommend that we all try to go. I think it would be good to have the planning board be at the master planning for the university if we can. I haven't looked at my calendar, but,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Especially since we don't have a second meeting this month.
Yeah.
Good use of our-
That'd be our homework. That's right. Plus, aren't you curious to see the inside of the new building? It got.
How do you know we haven't?
It got, oh, I don't know. Unless UMass PD has picked you up, it's got LEED certified silver, I think, or gold maybe, I don't know, platinum even.
Means the prisoners are wearing gold.
If you're on the wrong end of the law.
I'll bring that back so that he can see that he missed that one. Whoever this is. Is that David? Is that you?
I mean, we don't have to post it unless
Is
we're
that you?
undertaking planning board
Yeah.
business.
Okay, you missed that one, because I see the space.
Open meeting law.
Is that your
Correct.
space?
If we're going to spectate, then we don't.
Okay.
We have to speak this.
Okay.
Yeah, better to limit our participation if it's not a posted meeting.
I can't commit to chairing such a meeting. If someone else wants to do that and you want to notice it, I'm not opposed to it.
What's that? I'm sorry, what?
What meeting?
Mr. O'Keefe is making the point that if more than a quorum of us appear at this meeting and seem to discuss the matters that would appear before the planning board, I guess, that would be technically, it would be a violation of the open meeting law, because it would be an unnoticed meeting of the planning board.
Okay, so what do we do? If we just,
I won't be there. I'll be at the PVPC meeting.
So unless there's a quorum of us that are gonna go, it's a moot point.
That's correct. And if there is a quorum of us, if we sit quietly in the audience,
Yeah.
there's not an issue there either.
I won't be attending, I'll be out of the state.
So there's two.
I won't be attending.
I would have planned to attend. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I may attend.
I probably would not.
Well,
So
not.
if we do end up with a quorum there, we
4,
will not
5.
politely to each other and keep our distance. Okay. Right, Ms. Brestrup?
Did someone not sign these forms? I only have 7 signatures.
No, you have 8.
Oh, I have 8, I'm sorry. Here's the 7.
It's late.
It's late.
Yes.
It's late.
We're gonna wrap this up, guys.
Yeah, let's
Yep.
Second.
There's, I don't think there's anything else on here that can't wait. I'm just gonna read off what the items are. Water Supply Protection Committee, wants a planning board rep, so we need to discuss that at some point, appointing a planning board rep to the Water Protection Committee. We received the Planning Commissioner's Journal. We've already discussed the schedule of next meetings, which are January 4th, January 18th is a possibility, February 1st is a possibility, February 15th is a possibility. Correct, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. A&Rs, we have an A&R.
This A&R is the property at the corner of Chestnut Street and East Pleasant Street. There are 3 properties in a row. The middle property is being subdivided into 2 parcels, the rear of which is not a building lot. The purpose for this is that the person who owns the property to the south of the middle lot, or to the north of the middle lot, is the same person. And he wants to be able to walk back and forth between his 2 lots without having to go to the street. And probably has some play area for his children. So that's what this is about.
We just did an A&R, and then, is it right next door to the other
I think
A&R?
it's right next door to the other A&R. Yeah.
Chestnut and East Pleasant, it's like A&R Central.
This is the one from houses and rentals.
Chestnut and East Pleasant. This is the lot that's being cut in 2. Alexander Heim owns this lot and this lot, and he'd like to have this place here for play area and walking back and forth between these 2 houses. This lot here appears to meet the lot area requirements for the RG zoning district. This lot doesn't, and that's why it's marked not a buildable lot.
So his request is to make them one?
You may want to build on that for 5 years.
He doesn't want to build on it, no.
Is he on the middle one?
He doesn't own the middle lot. The middle lot has a house on it. I mean, yeah, he does not own the middle lot. He owns this lot and this lot. And he's buying this piece of land from the woman who owns this property.
So the other A&R we just did is this one.
Right there.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So they're combining.
And this
they're
house is
dividing.
being renovated, but that's the same family, right? Or Alexander
This
Ham?
and this are the same. This is different.
Oh my.
There are 3 houses,
Complicated.
1, 2, 3.
This one's being renovated.
Okay.
We have lots of plans here that need to be signed. With the special pen. I guess the special pen has to go on the Mylar. You can use whatever to sign the paper.
I love the A&R, approval not required, but we're going to look at it anyway.
Well, we had a
Approval is
hour debate about it. Approval not required. Remember that?
I know.
Subdivision regs.
People can make committee reports right now if they like.
While we're signing.
PVPC will pass. We meet December 15th.
Zoning already made their report.
Transportation Task Force still has nothing happening.
Community Preservation Act is meeting a week from Thursday, and the deadline is this Friday, which is 2 days from now, for requests for money, funding.
The redevelopment authority, I have no report.
Agricultural Committee meets next week. Zoning Subcommittee, we've already heard. How come so many plans this time?
I don't know.
Chris, are there any other applications upcoming that you need to be aware of?
Or zoning board of appeals applications, do you want to be aware of those?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Carlos Ramos would like to establish a home occupation at 222 Belchertown Road. It's a home improvement contracting occupation. Natal London would like to establish a dog washing business at 321 Main Street.
321.
That's the building where the new area is. UMass Facilities Planning would like to install an oversized identification sign at 758 North Pleasant Street. That used to be the site of the Episcopal Church outreach building to UMass students, and now I think there's a Holocaust museum there. That's been they're interested in this. And I'm interested in those.
The report of the chair is that it's late, it's time to go home, so all in favor of adjourning?
Hey,
Aye. I enjoyed it.
that's your best report ever, David. We're done.
I think so.